Hello, everybody, and excuse me. Welcome to the Town Drumheller Committee of the Whole meeting for today, Tuesday, June 9th, starting at 4:30 here. 4:30 mark time. Yeah. All right. Um, we got our opening comments. Does anybody else want to start? Deputy Mayor Hardy.
Okay, as we know, Canada Day is just around the corner, and Drumheller knows how to do it right. Here in the Valley, there will be various fun activities taking place all day, including the pancake breakfast at 7 a.m. The theme this year is Western theme. The parade starts at 10 a.m. The cake cutting ceremony will be at 2:15 p.m. For more details on all these amazing festivities, check out our website and watch the socials in the coming weeks here. We will look forward to seeing everyone out there in their best dress Western wear.
Right on. Thanks for that. Councillor Clough.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I had the pleasure of attending the Drumheller Pride's flag raising last night. Great turnout for everyone, good weather, and that their event started a little earlier this year, but it still kicks off, a full month of activities. And check out their Drumheller Pride, or Badlands Pride, pardon me, Facebook page.
All right. Thanks for that. Councillor McNeil.
Yes, thank you. This Friday, Council will be heading out into the community together for a guided tour of our municipally owned lands and facilities. So we've got 15 stops planned on this tour, so it's sure to be action-packed and very interesting. We're really looking forward to connecting with all the staff and learning about all of the essential services and the work behind the scenes that the staff do every day.
Yeah, thanks for that. Councillor Zrisky.
Yeah, now that we have the exceptionally warm summer weather out there, people will be pleased to know that we have the outdoor pool open. So people can go to the outdoor pool in the hot sunny weather and enjoy the pool. The indoor pool, however, will be closed. There are some repairs that have to be done, so please enjoy the outdoor pool.
Right on. Thanks for that. And then I've had the honor of going to the Alberta Emerald Foundation Awards there on Thursday. And the town of Drumheller won their Environmental Excellence Award for the town's flood mitigation program. They presented us with this climate and adaptation resiliency category award, and our flood programs had many ups and downs over the past years, and I'm proud of our community and the flood team for seeing us through this difficult project. Many thanks to the Emerald Foundation for recognizing that greater value to the town, and here's the trophy if anyone wants to have a look at it. They saved 660 chopsticks building it. So this is how committed they are with their whole flood mitigation thing, or their environmental thing, I should say. All right. Can I get someone to make a motion to for our agenda? Well,
Actually, Your Worship, administration does have an emergent item. I'd like to add section 5.3 closed session for personnel as per section ATIA 20, disclosure harmful to personal privacy, and ATIA 29, advice from officials.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I get someone to, Councillor Kalafa?
I move that the Committee of the Whole adopts the amended agenda for the June 9th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented. I thought I said pardon me. The Committee of the Whole adopts the agenda for the June 9th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting as amended.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I get a second? Councillor McNeil, all in favor then? All in favor, motion carried. All right, Thanks for that. So right away we walk into delegations here. Mr. Brownstein, you gonna lead us in?
Thank you, Your Worship. Before us today is a delegation on the transit feasibility study by Travel Drumheller and WSP. In 2005, the town of Drumheller partnered with Travel Drumheller to secure funding for a grant through the Small Communities Opportunity Program for a transit feasibility study and a transit pilot program. As part of this partnership, Travel Drumheller is providing periodic updates on the status of this project. This presentation regarding the public transportation feasibility study completed by WSP as part of this project. This does meet pillar 2 of our strategic policies. So again, developing healthy and thriving community. Drumheller will deliver infrastructure, services, and partnerships to support health, safety, mobility, recreation, and overall quality of life for residents. There is a recommendation before the committee that the committee of the whole accepts the presentation of the Valley Connect Public Transport Feasibility Study from Travel Drumheller and WSP as information. There is also an alternative direction. The committee of the whole accepts the presentation for the Valley Connect Public Transportation Feasibility Study from Travel Drumheller and WSP as information and directs administration to bring further information back to the next meeting. And I'd also ask that, Your Worship, that you, given the technical nature of this report, the 10-minute time limit for the presentation be waived.
I think that's a pretty reasonable thing, Mr. Council. I think that'll be fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I ask that Lana come and join me at the podium, and she's going to go through the presentation in regards to the feasibility study. I will turn it over to Lana.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jared, for that introduction, and thank you for having us on the agenda. Are you guys going to share your screen, or do you want it to be happen here? Sorry, there's a couple folks online, so we're just.
Are you talking to me?
Yes,
Can you guys hear
sorry,
us?
Carolyn. Yeah.
I can share the screen right now.
So Carolyn will get the presentation up, and I'll just get started. So my name is Lana Phillips. I'm here with Travel Drumheller. My role is project manager for this work. As well, I'm joined today by 2 representatives of WSP, our consultant for the feasibility study. This includes Mai, who is the transit planning lead, as well as Carolyn, who is the manager of mobility advisory and planning here in Alberta. So I will start off with a few slides, just providing an introduction and context to those in the room as well as those watching online, followed by WSP will share the details of the study. We have still planned, despite the technical nature of this, to keep it to a solid 20 minutes and not keep you too long because I know there's lots on the agenda. I will note that this is in follow-up to some previous presentations on January 13th of this year, as well as June 15th of 2025. Next slide. So you might wonder why Travel Drumheller is exploring transportation. Well, there's a number of reasons. Travel Drumheller has undertaken this Valley Connect project as there was a need identified in the Destination Development Plan, which is our region's tourism plan. Specifically, the lack of transportation was identified to a barrier to economic growth here in tourism, which is an anchor to our community. In addition, there's a number of community-based data sources and municipal policies that speak to how transportation can play a role in addressing the challenges and create opportunities around housing, employment, civic engagement, and economic growth. Next slide. So Valley Connect as a project, it does have 2 main components. Today we're going to focus on the feasibility study, but I do want to remind folks who might be unaware the other piece of the puzzle is a shuttle bus pilot. So the pilot itself is a tool for learning, collecting data, and informing future decisions. Operating this summer from June 26th to August 29th, Fridays and Saturdays, this free hop-on-off shuttle bus anchored in our downtown will provide locals and visitors an opportunity to explore the valley. We will share the findings, the data collected and findings of this pilot with both the community and council in the fall. I certainly invite council and all of the community members to, at the very minimum, be aware of the bus, but certainly you're welcome to take the bus and share your thoughts in the formalized process of data collection for those who ride the bus. So far, we've got lots of wonderful feedback and excitement around this bus, and we continue to promote it internally as we gear up to its launch. Next piece. So as I said, the focus of today is the feasibility study. The official title is Transit Feasibility Study. We'll probably just call it the study or feasibility study. And really what it is a technical assessment that explores what public transportation could look like in our community. The slide there highlights a bit of the components that are included in it. And as mentioned, the technical document, the full study is included in the agenda for those who'd like to really dig in afterwards. It is also available on the Travel Drumheller website as well. So the highlights, the focus of today's presentation presented by WSP will really just be the recommended option and a little bit about the open house. Before we get off to WSP though, I just want to provide some overview of the community touchpoints we've had that have supported this work since we start in fall 2025. So the slide here just shows a broad overview of some of the engagements we've done, which have included surveys, interviews, and the open house leading up to this point, as well as that we will have, obviously, you can take the bus itself, and there'll be a wrap up in the fall. I want to acknowledge and thank everybody who attended the open house held in February, where we shared community demographics along with context to the work we were doing, research on comparative opportunities, and provided a number of options for input. So now I'll pass it on to WSP, and there shall a few of the insights gained from that open house, followed by an overview of the recommended option 3 that has been informed by this community feedback.
Okay, thanks, Lana. So as Lana said, we're going to focus on the outcomes of the project as opposed to really diving into the process. But the one piece of the process we are going to spend a little bit of time on is the engagement. So as Lana pointed out, we did a community survey and we also did targeted community interviews, and then we did an open house. And there was great attendance at the open house. And in general, the themes that we saw was there is a general wide interest in having a local transit system. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. There was a real desire for there to be connections for all the communities, including some of the more far-flung ones like East Cooley and Rosedale. There was an importance for access to seasonal jobs, services like grocery stores, healthcare, access to recreation and tourism. When we presented the alternatives between a fixed route system, which Maya will get into some more detail on, versus an on-demand system, there was really much more support for the idea of a fixed route system. The people we talked to wanted there to be predictable, regular service that they could kind of plan their day around as opposed to an on-demand service. There was some curiosity about how the service might coordinate with Valley Bus. And at that open house, we shared 5 different options, and you will see 6 on your screen. We're not trying to trick you. We did kind of end up refining one of those options based on our evaluation and based on the feedback from the open house. But this was what we presented to the public at the engagement. I know some of you were able to be there. So we provided an option of a fixed route. So that's, a regular bus route that just focused on Central Drumheller, a fixed route that went further out into the community, a fixed route that went to the community, but only at certain times of day, and then an on-demand transit, and then continuing with some version of a community partnership. And so based on the feedback and our evaluation, which Maya will talk about, we ended up picking and recommending an option that is fixed route in the central area of Drumheller, so regular service Monday to Friday, and then seasonal intercommunity service. So regular service out to the communities, but only during peak seasons. And then I'll pass things over to Mai, who will go into some more details on that recommended option.
Thanks, Carolyn. So I'll be getting into the really technical details of this recommended option 3. As she just mentioned, it's 2 core routes in Central Drumheller and 1 seasonal route in the summer, July and August, serving the most of the entire community. And this service would be centered around a hub at the Badlands Community Facility, creating a simple and easy to understand network with an easy transfer point. And there are a few reasons why this option rose to the top. So first, it provides a consistent and predictable service. We heard again and again that how important that was to people. Riders will know where the bus goes and when it arrives on a known schedule. And second, it connects the destinations that were repeatedly identified throughout our engagement process, including shopping, healthcare, recreation, employment, and tourism destinations. Third, it balances coverage with cost and adds service where it's most needed while avoiding the cost of providing year-round inter-community service. And finally, it's scalable. So the community doesn't have to commit to the largest possible system on day one. This option provides a practical first step that can grow over time if demand exists. And I'll be going into the scalability detail in a later slide. It's also worth noting that this direction aligns really closely with the findings from the previous transit study in Drumheller completed in 2009, so almost 20 years ago. That study also identified fixed route service as the most appropriate long-term direction for the community. And with, how much the community has grown since then, the need for this service is so much greater now than it was before. So what will this look like? As mentioned, weekday service 7 to 6 p.m. On a 90-minute frequency. And this would require 2 active buses plus 1 spare to fully provide the service as described. We also developed ridership projections for this option using a peer utilization approach to calculate ridership. So because transit doesn't already exist here, we had to look at other similar sized towns and saw that there was a low and high end in transit utilization rates in other rural transit systems. And we created a range to get an idea of where Drumheller could fall in. So the annual average range is about 9,000 to 17,000 riders. And one thing to add that is that ridership is expected to gradually build as residents and visitors become familiar with the service and adjust their travel habits. Next slide. So annual operating costs are shown here based on the recommended service patterns we mentioned. The key number shown here is service hours. So service hours represent the total number of hours that transit vehicles are in operation and available for passengers to use. This is a really common metric used throughout the transit industry because it allows comparisons between systems of different sizes to kind of figure out if they're operating within an appropriate framework. And the cost per service hour was developed based on the total recommended service hours for this option and peer indexed annual operating costs to get an average cost of about $120 per hour. This would include things like gas, labor, and maintenance. So we calculated a total annual operating cost of about $413,000. And that might sound like a big number, but what we'd like to emphasize here is the scalability. So the table on the right shows that Drumheller is not limited to a single implementation approach. Service can be introduced on a smaller scale initially and expanded over time. That table shows if the bus just operated a couple of days a week, the operating cost could be cut in half while still giving people access to run errands or go to appointments on the days they know the bus is running. And that's just one approach to scalability. There are other ways that can be discussed. So next slide, and moving on to capital cost. Beyond the annual operating cost, there's a one-time capital cost associated with starting a new transit service. And this includes vehicles, stops, shelters, and supporting infrastructure. And the estimated capital cost for this recommended option is about 1.6 million. That is another really big number, but an important consideration is that there are significant external funding opportunities available to help offset these costs. Programs like the Rural Transit Solutions Fund and the Canada Public Transit Fund have provided a huge amount of funding to rural communities across Canada for transit vehicles and supporting infrastructure. And a lot of municipalities have been able to secure substantial funding for their capital investments, approaching up to 80% of their total costs, which greatly reduces the local contribution required. Just as an example, to the north, Whitecourt in northern Alberta received about 2.3 million last year to cover capital costs and supporting infrastructure. And then lastly, let's talk about the expected financial performance of this recommended service. So like all public transit systems, the service would require an ongoing municipal investment, and the projected cost recovery ratio ranges from approximately 8% to 16%, depending on ridership levels, and assuming a fare of about $3 for central routes and $5 for that intercommunity route. While 8 to 16% sounds like a low cost recovery, it might be important to add that transit is a public good, and it's generally not expected to pay for itself through fares alone. This percentage range is actually really consistent with many rural and small community transit systems across Canada. And from a benchmarking perspective, the projected costs per capita and cost recovery ratios are generally in line with other communities reviewed as part of this study. So for comparison, a large city like Edmonton has a cost recovery rate of 20%. So 8 to 16% isn't that bad. And I just want to close out with, it's important to remember that when thinking about these costs, this is a service for the community to provide mobility, to improve access to jobs and services, support economic activity, and improve quality of life for residents and visitors. So I'll hand it back to you, Lana, to close this out if you want to add anything.
Yeah, thank you, Maya and Carolyn. So yeah, in closing, I just want to reinforce the scalability of the work we've done and those last comments with Maya. So public transportation has the potential to support residents, strengthen our economy, and create new opportunities across the valley. It can help connect people to housing, employment, services, recreation, and each other. Over the past year, we've seen growing interest in transportation solutions within our community. The enthusiasm around Valley Connect and the arrival of FlixBus demonstrates that people are paying attention, participating, and looking for better ways to move across and connect. This feasibility study provides a roadmap. While a report alone won't create these outcomes, it gives us the information needed to make informed, forward-thinking decisions. Through the Valley Connect pilot, we will continue gathering local data and real-world experience to better understand how public transportation could serve our community. The community has shown interest, and this summer we will hope that the community will demonstrate demand. The opportunity now is for council to build on that momentum and determine what role public transportation should play in Drumheller's future. This report provides a strong foundation for that conversation. The next step is taking action and deciding where we go from here. We certainly appreciate your time and of course are here and available to answer questions.
Thank you for that. Got any questions there? Councillor Zursky.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and the very in-depth statistics. We always like statistics when they deal with money on council. Undoubtedly, public transportation is a huge issue in the Drumheller Valley, has been for many, many, many years. And we've heard from a lot of people that wouldn't it be nice to have a bus to get to here and there and get around the valley. So it's absolutely necessary, right? It is something that I know council has been looking at for years and years. And this seems to me we're getting kind of close, which is really good. A couple of things, just the financial aspect of it again. as with any large capital expenditure that council looks at, the first thing, of course, we look at are grants. And this information today is very good. And I'm sure council will start looking at some of these grants, because very often when you have a large capital outlay, a town this size is, just not capable of coming up with millions in capital funding. So I'm sure the town will be looking at these grants. That being said, all said and done, every, as was mentioned, every public transportation system costs money, and it does not pay for itself. And so it will be up to council going forward to lobby and advocate on behalf of this project with our local taxpayers. When you look at 16% cost recovery, sounds good. That still leaves the 356,000. And when you consider the town collects about $110,000 for a 1% increase in taxes, if I'm correct there, Mr. Gregg, then we're looking at, over a 3% increase in taxes just to pay for this, just to pay for public transit. And that's where council is going to have to go out to the public, to taxpayers, and say, this is worth it, that this will really enhance our community. It has been needed for many years. We've had requests from not just local residents, but certainly tourists as well. So that will be the challenge for council, I think.
Can I just offer a reminder that many of the numbers are shown at the max capacity, and I think Mai did a very good job of acknowledging you don't need to lead with the biggest, fullest system. There's a lot of opportunity for scalability. So I think that's an important thing to reinforce when we are talking among the community and among yourselves, that a lot of creativity and thought, you can make a meaningful step without going the full way.
Councillor McNeil.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate the presentation. Excellent information. One thought that comes to mind, I was just thinking with respect to the grant opportunities, that I look at this in terms of the summer seasonal service, that expanded service. Would there be a different pool of funds that would be available for grants, essentially more on the tourist side, in addition to what would support municipal transit?
From my perspective, I'm not aware, but it's certainly something we could explore. Mai or Carolyn, I don't know if you have any awareness of tourism-specific transit funding.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah, so that's something we can
But
take away.
it's an
and keep,
interesting idea for sure.
yeah, we can certainly take that away and keep an eye out. And when I present the pilot fundings in the fall, if we find anything, circulate that back.
Great, thank you. And then I just have a couple of other comments. I'd be really interested to see, like, when you talk about scalability, what some more economical or affordable options are for, say, a smaller bus, not the 35 passenger one, just to see what that would look like. And then, in addition, it's really important to me, as we seriously consider this, how we can integrate this service with the Valley Bus Society and their offerings. Already the town does subsidize Valley Bus. And so I think it's really important that there's some fulsome conversations with the Valley Bus group.
Thank you for that. Nothing to say there.
I did just pop up the just to point out that the unit cost for the minibus is quite a bit lower than the 35-foot bus. So that's the bus that was recommended for the service to the smaller communities, because ridership would be lower on it. So that bus is less expensive. So that could be one scaling option, is that you start with just one minibus that's only 85,000, for example.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Hardy.
As someone that's never ran an online survey, this 205 respondents we got out of a community of 8,000. Now, is this typical for that kind of, like, this seems like a big deal. And that's a pretty low response to me.
Administration is welcome to offer other experiences, but certainly that's not unrealistic for a community. It takes a lot to get a lot more. You will note that other sorts of surveys that even we do across Canada is just pulse checks have far more that and it's across Canada. So it's actually reasonably good. But that's also why we use a number of different tools beyond the survey, why it's complemented by interviews and open houses, because the different channels you use, the more results you'll get. And as well, I will note we were very intentional that we didn't just do the survey online, we also did it in hard copy. So that also ensures a breadth of responses from different demographics and people more than just only doing it online.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, I got a few things. I mean, this is a great, I really see the value in this. Our valley is so big and it does have needs from one end to the other as far as bringing, you know, whether it's workers from one end of the valley or visitors, whichever way it is. I think there's a lot of value in getting a bus ridership like this established. You know, as far as our capital costs and all that, if you farm it out with through a valley bus type of thing, I mean, that's there, you contract through there and see if you can't do it. The biggest thing for me in my mind with this whole situation is that we need to get as many people on that bus as you can throughout the summer, and we need to show usage of this system, because it's, you know, you've got it running, it's right there. Let's show need. Our community, we need to show that there's a need for this bus, and yeah, it's not exactly like a taxi, and yeah, you don't get to your door service or anything, but I mean, in the big city, you got to walk to the bus stop, and whether it's down the block, whether it's on the out in the industrial park or wherever it is, there's a lot of value to being able to just go and get on a bus and run into town, or go to work from, you know, from Rosedale to out to the Tyrrell, or from East Cooley, or, you know, people going the other way there, so out to work at the Atlas coal mine. So I see a lot of value to this, and we just need to encourage people to get in there, get on there, and then you know, is there a way for anybody to put their feedback in that? Is there a channel that's open for that in your system here as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mayor. I always want to just call you Mayor Tony, but that seems too, I'm sorry, I'm being too casual. Yes, that's a great question. So in terms of feedback, we will have, again, using both like a digital QR code as well as hard copy directly on the buses for those taking the riders, because we do want to get information on how, why, and what, and the drivers themselves. I'm happy to also provide a conduit for just general feedback for those in the community who haven't taken the bus on our website, but I would encourage everybody and anybody who takes the bus, please provide your feedback then, because that provides us the best consolidated information of how this is being used. So thank you for that question. And I will just offer to your earlier comment about, yeah, there's a bunch of different opportunities if the municipality takes it all on or it's contracted out, etc. There is some information in the larger feasibility study about that for those who are interested in sort of the different ways that you could structure that portion of the service.
Yeah, it's just it's creating a need and finding a will to make it happen. Is there any other questions? Anybody else? No one else? Okay, then can I get a motion then? Or do we need a motion for this one? We need a motion? All right, so can I get a motion for that? Is anyone on that page? Sure, Councillor McNeil.
Thank you. Yes, I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the presentation of the Valley Connect Public Transport Feasibility Study from Travel Drumheller and WSP as information.
Thank you for that. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Miller, all in favor? Motion carried. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Town.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Um, this this evening, we have invited Waldrose Assessment Services to come and prepare a presentation and field questions from Council on the 2026 assessment or assessments. So, as you know, Waldrose Assessment Services is the contracted and appointed assessors for the town. They do this work on our behalf, and they prepared some information for Council. Um, Again, similar to the previous presentation, given the nature of this report, we're asking that the 10-minute time limit for the presentation be waived. Unless we challenge you to speed run this, but
I think
that's probably not for the best.
I think it's worth our while to hear the whole sad story.
Yep. There's no financial implications to this information. It's just information on the previous year's assessments. In terms of strategic policy alignment, this falls under Pillar 1 of our strategic policy, which is providing sustainable services, as this would helps us ensure municipal services are sustainable, predictable, transparent, and supported by a resilient organization and long-term financial planning. Couple recommendations there. The recommended one is that the committee of the whole receives this as information as presented. There's an alternative one that it be received as information and council provides additional direction if needed. With us today is Riley Kloss from Waldrose Assessment Services, and I'll let him go through his presentation and take questions.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. I always remember back to last year, so this year was a little bit more pleasant on the assessment side than, which is good. I'll try and keep it 10 minutes or less and give you guys as much time for questions if you have. So this is a condensed version. There's a handful of just basic assessment information on here, but most of it is just going to be kind of year over year changes and where the assessments have went to. So just kind of start off by a couple, market value. Most of our assessments, with the exception of machinery and equipment, farmland, handful of property types, are all market value properties, whether they're residential, non-residential. They're all pretty much a market valuation. We assess everything, basically. That's kind of the point of that second part there. Every piece of land, every piece of improvement, anything affixed to the property. Mobile homes in the mobile home park or modular homes, basically anything affixed that would sell without special mention. So, let's get that. So how they're prepared. So the Municipal Government Act and then MRAT specifically are the two main guidelines that we use as legislation to value the property. So we do them using mass appraisal. I will touch on that one on the next slide. But basically we're taking all of the sales that happen within town. We're comparing our assessment with the sale prices, and then that tells us whether values are increasing or decreasing. I think in our 3-year cycle, we had around 700 residential properties sell. So we have different classes and different ages, and we organize them all by that and by area and whatnot. But at the end of the day, over a 3-year period, we do have hundreds of sales that tell us that the values need to increase or decrease. They're an estimate, obviously, of value. But the point, and ultimately the point of the assessment is to distribute the tax burden. That's a common line for us. We're not here to determine your taxes. We're here to prepare an assessment for the taxes to be distributed. So, maybe next. So mass appraisal. Touched on that mostly. I'll skim through that one quick, but basically we are using 3 years worth of sales. So July of 2022 to July of 2025 is our 3-year cycle. So this is your 2025 assessment for 2026 taxes. So all the sales after July of 2025 have not been included in the analysis for the 25 assessment. So we're very close to closing on kind of adding in our next year's worth of sales for the 26 assessment and 27 taxes, which means we'll remove the July 22 to July of 23 sales. But I think this is my last. All right. couple more quick ones on this, but yeah, basically the approach is to market value, so cost, income, and sales. The cost is going to be most common there is your industrial parks, your land plus improvement values. Um, we don't get tons of typical transactions of these types of properties, so we use a modified cost on them. The income approach, we value properties based on the income that they generate. So hotels, mobile home parks, apartment buildings, those are kind of your typical common properties where the valuation of those properties is determined based on the revenue that they come with. And then sales comparison is your typical residential properties. We'll get, similar type properties will sell for similar values. So we'll use similar homes to value that have sold to value all the properties. Assets just our form. We like to put this one in. We download all the sales from land titles. Everything that we do gets uploaded back into Asset, which is the provincial system, and fully audited by provincial auditors. They're independent of both us and the town. And we have to hit a 95 to 105% ratio. So when we take all those sales and when we're determining whether we need to increase the assessments 15% like last year or 5 like this year, that's part of that. That's what tells us how, where we have to go, and we have to meet those thresholds. Yeah, that's the main part of that. Last one here. So important dates. So December 31st is our condition date. So whatever's physically on the property, that's what gets assessed as of December 31st. If it's a progressive home, 100% land value, whatever portion of the house is there, that would get assessed for that following tax year. July 1st, as mentioned, that's our valuation date. So that 3-year period, everything goes back to July. It's all reactive to the sales that have happened. We're not trying to predict or estimate what the market's doing. That's why it's intentionally set up that way. The only caveat on the condition date is the supplementary assessment. So if a building is completed during the year, we do have a supplementary assessment here. So they would get a supplementary tax bill, which is based on whenever that property is completed. So it's prorated to a number of months based on completion. All right, so jump into the data. So this one quick. So basically this just shows us, 76, just about 77% of our assessment comes from residential property, compared to 23. There is actually some machinery and equipment that didn't calculate into here, but there are a handful of properties that would typically show up in the machinery and equipment, but it's small. But yeah, the point here, just basically three quarters of our assessment is coming on the residential assessment code. So this one compares basically our 3 years worth of data. This is gross assessment dollars. The next slides will get into a little bit more, but or in a couple slides, I guess. But basically, 5.3, 1.3 is kind of the assessment change year over year from our total residential assessment year over year. Just about 26% over a 3-year period. That lines up with kind of the typical increases that most properties have seen over a 3-year window. And then, yeah, we'll circle back on one of the slides after that. But the next one is just the non-residential. Same idea here. So similar numbers, a little bit higher on the 3-year window. And this year we saw a higher increase. Those non-res properties up just about 11%. A lot of that was triggered. We had a lot of the industrial park had a lot of good activity. We had a lot of vacant lots sell. We had a lot of improved industrial property sell too, showing strong values. The other thing included here is we've pretty much got rid of COVID numbers on our income approach. So hotels, our hotels were hit pretty good throughout the province with COVID. So we've gotten rid of that 2021 to 2022 years worth of financials, and we replaced them with very strong 2024 to 2025 numbers. So that saw pretty much the hotels saw kind of a 12 to 18% increase this year, compounded with a healthy increase last year as well. So this one was, I tried to pull as much data as I could without giving you way too much, but and making it confusing here. But that kind of shows. So this one shows about on the general single family homes, about a 6% increase on the actual value there. Underneath, yeah. So that 5 to 6% is kind of that typical year over year value in residential properties. For the hamlets, when I refer to the hamlets, that's kind of a real term, I guess, for kind of the outlying communities. Which on maybe on the next one here. So this one shows a little more maybe in detail on how the overall stats show, you know, that 5-6% increase. But when we look at this, we saw really healthy increases in values to the outlying communities. This, you know, I would say that some of the flood mitigation coming full circle now in some of these areas. Properties are selling more. We're seeing lots of sales, and we're seeing very strong sales, and that's yeah, that's driving some of those bigger increases. So yeah, that's all maybe I'll say on that. But when they get clumped together, it's, you know, more normalized when we pull it back a little bit. This was kind of the best way. I apologize. Those are not negatives there. They're supposed to be an arrow, I guess. So again, we've broken down maybe some more of our non-res properties to show some of those increases year over year. They're right in line kind of with the overalls. Couple of, you know, interesting was that, you know, the jail did a reinspection of the institution this year. Saw some very healthy increases to the assessment on the institution. So yeah, lots of individual things that kind of get lumped together. But overall, yeah, we're seeing probably basically a 5 to 6% increase on the res side and a 10% increase on the non-res side. So just a couple interesting, you know, flood mitigation. So we're kind of getting, you know, nearing the end of that. We've seen, you know, we're kind of seeing the final stages of subdivisions happening, parcels being finalized. And we're kind of I'm looking forward to the impact of these. You know, I think it provides, you know, safety and assurance for people's properties. So yeah, as always, we follow the market. You know, we're not trying to estimate what's going to happen, but time will tell. Data centers, I threw this one on in case anybody had any questions. They're kind of a hot topic. We've got lots of very similar type properties to them. The main takeaway for this one, majority of the value for data centers is in the actual equipment that's not the non-accessible equipment in there. So 8 to 9% typically of the total project cost is a realistic dollar figure that you would see. If you had $100 million facility, the actual assessment that would be produced from $100 million facility would be 8 to 10% of that. So just there in case anybody's got it. Fall conference, I threw that out there to the Alberta Assessors Association, where I'm helping host our conference here in the fall. So if anybody has any interest in coming around or saying hello, yeah, basically just we do one every fall. We do a big one in the spring. We do kind of a smaller one in the fall, and it's going to be here. It's going to be here in September. So looking forward to that. And yeah, hopefully that was close to 10 minutes. But I'll open her up for questions if you have.
So you're having a fall conference in here?
We are, yeah. So it's more of a senior leadership conference, but it's a fall. We do it every year. The spring ones are in the big cities, and then the fall ones move around the smaller centers outside of Calgary and Edmonton, basically. So yeah, it should be fun.
Cool, something to look forward to there.
Yeah.
Anybody got some questions for him? Councillor Zaritsky.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Good to see the assessments in Drumheller going up. Means property values are going up, means people want to move here and buy stuff, and that drives the economy. I'd like to first of all thank you for all you do in the community in answering questions for people who have assessment questions. Many times people ask me about their assessment, did this and did this, and I said, well, phone the company, and they'll be very happy to talk you through your assessment and whatever. And I've had many people say that you guys are so good, that you answer all the questions, that you're very patient. And so thank you for that.
Appreciate
I guess that's a little bit reflected in the lack of assessment review board appeals that we have in the area. We don't have any. People have assessment questions, they go to you guys, you explain them, and they're good. So thank you very much for that. That communication is very good. A couple of other questions. First of all, mass appraisal. I'm not a big fan of mass appraisal. And the reason that I'm not a big fan is that the valley is so diverse. And you kind of showed it in your statistics there that, and I mean, we have Nackmine, we have East Cooley, and we have Rosedale, and we have Wayne, and to me, mass appraisal works very well if you have half a dozen, just using residential homes in a typical resident in Riverside, for example, and those homes are 1,200 square feet, and they're built, within the last 40 years, and you've had 4 of them sell, in the last 3 years, and then you have a 1,200 square foot home in Riverside. Well, you can nail that assessment pretty good. The problem that I see in Drumheller is that you'll have a 1,200 square foot home in Nackmine and a 1,200 square foot home in Midland and one in East Cooley, and how you kind of compare those, and get a mass use. I mean, you guys are mandated by the MGA to use mass appraisal, right? You don't have a choice. But I'm just saying it seems to be pretty difficult in the valley to use that appraisal method, because we have such diversity. Anyways, you don't even have to comment on that. That's just my rant. The other one I wanted to talk about, and I've had questions on this, are the valley slopes. So the slopes on the hills. I mean, that is somebody's property. And our municipal development plan basically has indicated that the valley slopes are a valuable asset to this area. That's one of the main things that hundreds of thousands of tourists come to see every year. They want to see this valley. And that's why we have in the MDP, we have limited things like on the top of the valley. We limit what can be built there. And so the valley slopes are, and even in the land use bylaw, are very restricted in terms of anything you can do with them, like anything. And so I've had questions from people who have a fair amount of property, but a lot of it is basically the valley hill slopes, and yet their assessment seems to be fairly high. And I'm just wondering, how do you value a valley slope that can virtually never be developed in any way, shape, or form? How can that have any value? I mean, to me, it's like zero value. Anyways, just a comment on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. We get that. We actually did a bunch of reviews through certain areas, like the road down to Wayne, for example. Pretty much every single one of those acreages is exactly what you're mentioning, whether it's being flooded out by the river and it's not usable, or it's actually in the river, or it's up in the slope. So, I mean, the easiest answer is that we use, we call them an influence. So if it's if they've got a 20-acre site and 15 acres of their land is slope or unusable, we would apply an adjustment to recognize the area that's usable versus the area that's not. So we would have the total parcel area, and then we have something that's called an area in use. So we could actually distinguish how much of the land is usable and how much is not. Typically, like, and with, I mean, maybe the benefit of the mass appraisal side, it's similar to rural assessments where every property gets a 3-acre site. It doesn't matter if you have a 160-acre quarter and a 7-acre farmyard. It's mandated that you just get a 3-acre site that gets assessed to that property. So most of the value in rural land is in that 3 acre site. So if you have 6 acres, it doesn't mean that it's worth twice as much as your 3 acre site. It might be worth, 10% more or 5% more than your 3 acre site. So the same holds true through those areas, right? If you have a developable area where you can build on and you can have your home, there's going to be significant value in that area, whether it's half an acre, 1 acre. And we have lots of good sales to justify, a 1 acre parcel or a half an acre parcel, right? So we kind of know, the range on both ends of what somebody's willing to pay for something like that. And we know that if it's 100 grand for an acre, it doesn't mean it's $1 million for 10 acres, especially if 8 of those are unusable. But the easiest answer to that is that we use adjustments on the land so that we recognize it's a 10 acre parcel, but 80% is unusable. So we're valuing, 95 or 98% of your land component is in that 2 acres, and the remainder is off. Until we get sales that show otherwise. East Cooley is a great example, and I've spoken with most of, a lot of the residents in East Cooley, because we have a pile of land sales in East Cooley, and they're very strong, and we haven't had those ever. So, basically we just, we can't ignore it. But it also, these are fair market properties. They're being listed on MLS. They're being bought by people from the area, outside the area, and it just means that's, something that used to be worth a value 5 years ago is significantly appreciated.
Yeah, no, that's a very good explanation. I get two things out of that. First of all, it's damn difficult doing assessment in the valley. And the second thing I get out of that is, well, very obviously something is worth whatever somebody will pay for it. And so that affects the assessment. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely, and it is, yes, doing the assessments in the valley is difficult, because of exactly kind of what you're saying, right? I would say we're fortunate that we have other small village. We have the village of Morin, where you've got, a very limited, small municipality with a limited number of sales, very similar type things, except you don't have the backing of the rest of the statistics that the rest of Drumheller has too, right? So, that's maybe a benefit for us, is that we have lots of similar type municipalities that are just independently small. So we have to do the same thing with even more limited data. Yeah, good point. It is. Yeah, it is. And the flood mitigation doesn't make it. Didn't make it. That's that added a kink into it too, which is interesting. But
Anybody else have any questions? Councillor Kalafa.
Just to clarify some of the comments on the mass appraisal, it was my understanding that we actually do kind of parse out neighborhood for neighborhood to do the like for like. We're not doing the entire valley as one piece. How do we carve those out?
yeah, good point. So so we always look. I tell people we always start big. We look at 700. All the sales, the whole area, and then we have all of the areas broken down by location. So all of the outlying areas. For instance, like we can pull the stats on everything in East Cooley, and we can see how many vacant and improved parcels sold there. We can compare them over a number of years and see what they're doing. But we'll do that the same way in Midlands versus North Newcastle versus Riverside. And then, so we'll look at them as a whole. Then I'll kind of lump them together. So I might look at, Bankview and I'll look at similar areas, I guess, together to see how they are when I put 2 or 3 locations together, and then look at them independently as well too. So, I guess the easiest way to say, so we break everything out by location, and then within, there's subclasses of those locations and whatnot as well too. Same way we would with the non-res properties, where we would identify like highway commercial versus the downtown central commercial versus the industrial park, or the Rosedale industrial park. We've got different classes throughout those areas to to identify that.
I'm also just curious, seeing it looked like about a 5% increase this year residential. Are we starting to see sort of it plateau that a lot of the growth has happened and we might be finding some stability or?
Yeah, I would say yes. In some of our areas closer to Calgary, we're seeing, Calgary saw like a flat or just a reducing assessment this year, which is interesting because Edmonton saw like close to a 10% increase. But it's affordability is kind of what we've been getting, what we've been preached from the economists is, Calgary went up so fast, and so much that, um, it's just becoming a big affordability thing. So yeah, I would say it is. I'd say the biggest thing we noticed is, it's the floor on getting into a property has really increased. So if it used to be $150,000 to get into a certain property type, that's maybe now 200, or 250. So the higher valued properties are certainly, I would say, leveling off more. And even with some of these numbers, we would have saw like our higher value properties this year didn't go up nearly as much. But anything under $200,000 was very active. And it was not uncommon to see, at or above asking price on sales. Very few days on market. Um, and it's all tied to, rent is, if you're renting a property, it's going up significantly. Everything's tying kind of back to it. So yeah, we're seeing that across the board. Whereas the floor to get into a property is just becoming more and more expensive. And we're seeing that, even you pushed back, not to pick on East Cooley, but, we talk to a lot of the people who buy them, and we want a good sense of why. And, people are coming from all over Canada looking for affordable property, and if they see something, um, and it's not just Drumheller area, but like if stuff's affordable, um, it's attracting people just purely on price, um, all around the province, and, um, it drives up the price in that area, I guess too. But yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions?
I was just wondering, is there a difference on farmland, or is everything the same, like grazing land or cropland?
Yeah, so there's arable, non-arable, and pasture land and arable, pasture land, and irrigated land. Basically, it's $350 an acre, or irrigated is $450 an acre. That's perfect soil. I don't think Alberta even has an assessment at $350 an acre. So, it is all, unless you're, so the base rate starts the same, but then based on how productive the soil is, slope, stone coverage, everything that comes into it, the type of soil, how much clay, how much sand is in it, that all kind of comes down into ratings, to determine the end number. Um, in Drumheller, there is some actual like good farmland versus some pasture land, but, um, for the most part, yeah. So everything starts at $350 an acre, and then it gets adjusted based on the quality of the land, the usability of the land, yeah, the number of cow calf, pairs that could graze off of it. Um, it's an old, yeah. Does that answer your question? Um, yeah, we've been doing some cleanup, just to kind of try and review some of those, and, um, confirm, if we do have farm on them, confirm that they are still farming or that they're part of, a farming operation, and stuff like that. So that's always kind of an ongoing cleanup one. But, this past 2 years, we have cleaned up a lot of those properties, or reviewed them. Cleaned up is not a, yeah.
Any other questions? You're picking on East Cool. I happen to know a little bit about out there. And, you know, you're saying some of those properties. Now, one thing that I'm going to ask, and that's through not just East Cooley, is further up and along, is a lot of these properties have been on for sale for 3 years, 5 years, and no action. And then all of a sudden now people are coming from other places where they're getting too much money for their properties and they're moving out to places like East Cooley and they're driving the prices up 2, 3 times. And now we have residents that are sitting out there that are just barely, you know, they're making it along over there, but they're set with their money at this dial, and all of a sudden, boom, bang, we're way up and over. So how is there any function in there that, you know, like it's not the greatest area, that it's not the hot spot or anything like that. And like I say, a lot of these properties that are just sold are been on the market for 3 years, 5 years. So is there any kind of thing that's in the, you know, in your calculations to put up for that, or make concession for that? There we go.
A little bit, but not really. I mean, basically, and that's, you know, the biggest thing there comes back to that asset, that the third party provincial auditor. Um, they're there to make sure every transaction that transfers to land titles, you know, that we don't remove anything, that we don't adjust anything. Any sale that doesn't get used in our analysis, which as of the last couple of years they've mandated it, that we put a note into that sale to say why it's not used. Um, so we need some kind of proof that it was a family transaction or some kind of non-arm's length. There is a, you know, that 95% to 105% range, that can allow us to, you know, move a little bit if we know maybe an area is dropping in value, but the sales, because we're always behind, you know, we can target a lower percentage in that area. Um, but again, we're talking a couple of percent maybe, um, on a property. So very non-impactful numbers. So um, i- yeah, I think the same. You know, I mean, I would say to a ratepayer, we don't chase those listings. You know, if they're listed for 3 to 5 years and they're 3 or 4 times the value of our assessment, we don't chase those listings up to try and match our assessments to get to those listings, um, because you can list it at whatever, you know, you want it for. But once it does transfer, then we are obligated to take that into account. Now, because it's mass appraisal, one sale is not going to affect it. Um, Two sales is not going to affect it. Like it is the same way one or two low sales aren't going to pull everybody's values down. And that's maybe the power of mass appraisal too, is the stability of it. And and that's why it's here for the municipalities to not see massive swings, both directions, when that kind of stuff happens. So
Well,
to answer your
I
question,
know,
not
but
really.
that's where you're going to get a lot of your feedback and
Yep.
your kickback of people, is you know, because their property wasn't worth all this much money, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's worth double or triple that, and now their taxes have gone up this much, and they're not selling their houses. They weren't thinking of selling their houses, but now they're having to pay extra tax dollars. So this is our affordability crisis in motion, right? This is where our affordability comes into motion, and is there, so there's no function in there to consider, for consideration for those people, because there are a lot of retirees out there that, and this is how they're living. They're living there because it is a low
Yep.
dollar place, right? And now I know you got this year 3 year cycle. Can you explain that a little better for me?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, maybe just on that last cut, like we do hear that a lot too. And you guys are not unique to that, where, you know, it is the prices are pushing, things up. And maybe just one quick, like like rec properties, we've seen a very similar type thing where, recreational properties saw such a strong growth post COVID, that significantly outweighed a lot of the general, municipal residences, in, you know, in a counties and areas like that, right? So the tax burden, there was a, in a lot of cases, there were large tax shifts because the recreational property saw such large increases compared to the rest of the general ratepayers, right? So anytime that happens, it causes a tax shift on that. The 3 years, so yeah, so basically, so like the 2025 assessment for 2026 taxes is based on sales from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. So we take that 3 years worth of sales, we do a time adjustment to tell us basically where the values have went, so that the time adjustment brings everything to a July 1st, 2025 valuation date. That way we can use all of the sales adjusted for time in the analysis. And then what we'll do for the next year is we'll eliminate those July of 2022 to July of 2023. Those sales get dropped off, and then we'll add in the July of 25 to July of 26 sales. So so our 26 assessment for 27 taxes, we'll still use 3 years worth of sales. It'll just update those next 3 years worth of sales. The same will happen with hotels. So we'll use 3 years worth of financials for the hotels. So we'll do the same thing where we'll drop off 1 year's worth and add them on. It's a big, that's why the hotels have seen such positive growth. Same with apartment buildings. Rental rates have just been on the rise. Vacancies near zero. Yeah, so we use those, like using those 3 years. Using those 3 years is what helps stabilize those ratepayers as well too, though. If the hotels just went from, if we went from fully operating to COVID type numbers, you'd see the values drop way off, and vice versa. If they would skyrocket back up too.
I was
Does
just
that answer
looking
the
at
3 years? Does that answer the 3 year assessment?
I was just looking at your with that chart, where you're showing it goes up for the I can go back to it. The wrong way. Yeah, yeah, because part of that
Oh,
your
yeah.
chart would show, yeah. So you got a 25% assessment going up from 2022,
Yeah.
and then you show 5.3 to 2024. Is that so you're smoothing out the curve? Is that
Right. Yeah. So basically this year. So this year's was 5%.
right?
But if we look at it over 3, and a lot of times 3 years is the easiest way to look at them, because especially within property types. So we might see certain properties go up 7% 1 year, whereas 2 stories might go up 7% and bungalows might go up 12. Well, the next year it might be vice versa. But if you look at them over a 3 year window, usually the values are very similar and stable. Or if you're comparing a house versus a duplex versus a townhouse versus a modular. So depending on kind of, I don't want to say what's hot, but what's available, and the desirability for property types. You're looking at it at 1 year can skew it a little bit, but looking at it over 3 usually balances that all off. But yeah, about 25. I mean, that's over the 3. I mean, that's
I'm just trying to put it in
similar.
perspective so
Yeah.
we can all understand. We're asking questions for our residents as well here too.
Yeah.
And we're doing this so it helps everybody to try and understand what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anybody else got anything else that they'd like to throw in there? No? Okay. All right then. I thank you for your presentation.
You bet.
Much appreciated, because we do get a lot of questions and a lot of input on this. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes I'm sure you're aware it's not.
Yeah. No,
So-
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
All
Oh,
right,
my
can I
pleasure.
get someone to make a motion? Counselor Miller?
I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the presentation from Wild Rose Assessment Services as information.
Thank you for that. Can I get a seconder? Counselor Zaritsky, all in favor? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Yep. All right, and then we're off to our reports from administration. Mrs. Campbell?
Thank you, Your Worship. today. So I just have one item, and it's actually more for council than it is for the CAO. What it is last week, members of council and myself had the opportunity to attend the 2026 Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference. And we just wanted to take an opportunity to, for those attending, to share one or two key highlights from the event. It was a significant event. It does happen every year, normally not in Alberta, and it was here this year in Edmonton. So it was a good opportunity, especially for new council members, to do some knowledge sharing and see what is out there from not just our own province, but also from across Canada. There's a lot of really cool things going on out in the world, and sometimes it's good to see and see those firsthand without actually going there, but presentations that were being presented there and having some discussions. So with that, I will pass that off to Councillor Kalafa to start.
No, yeah, thank you. I guess sort of some of the highlights for me. One presentation, I went to Edmonton Unlimited, which is it's their innovation agency, kind of a business incubator, an entrepreneurship experience where they build the space where they can connect investors with ideas, with well, just amazing things, really. Part of FCM is often that you are dealing with so many communities of different sizes that you have to take some of these things that are working in a big city and try to pull the pieces out of it that would right size for you. And so in being part of Community Futures, there are some ideas that we can take back with that. Some of the other seminars and things that I did attend were a little closer to dynamics as a counselor, talking about how to deal with online hate, how to deal with incivility on a council, and just sort of some of the things to look at, and assessing yourself as you go to make sure of these things. Another one that Councillor Miller and I also did was alternatives to property taxes and development charges, just looking at different interesting ways to finance things in the communities. Again, some are bigger than what we are, and some may not be, and some have never heard of. I never thought that we could actually build a municipal bond market, and I'm sure you'll probably tell me why we haven't at this point, but it's worth a discussion. Again, I think a big part of this conference, especially so new into a new federal mandate, is figuring out how to align priorities with the new federal government and what they want to see and do. And, in some places in larger centers, that's easier than it probably is here, but it's a good exercise to think about. And yeah, I'll leave it at that if people have questions.
It's all good. Thanks for that. Deputy Mayor Hardy.
Yeah, so I attended a few of the breakout rooms during the conference. One being like the future of AI and how to implement AI into the processes. How it can be used to streamline websites and field different phone calls, just in the thousands and staff hours that it can save. Edmonton uses AI to predict and identify, potholes and pothole repairs even. So, yeah. I did a study tour of Canada's first net zero fire hall. It was a very expensive build. In 2023, it was $21.5 million. The place was built with R35 insulation throughout. It's completely electric. It has 350 plus solar modules on the roof. 35 different boreholes for the geothermals down to 70 meters each. Yeah, completely net zero, self-sufficient. In today's dollars, it's more like 35 million to build that, but just shows the inflation. I also attended Better Wastewater, Water and Wastewater. Yeah, basically it just went over, how to get control of your water losses to save money. That was the biggest part of that one. Uh, Councilor Miller and I also attended, um, immigration breakout room. I'll let her speak more on that one, but yeah, it was a good overall event, educational.
Yeah, there's a lot of topics in this show. Basically, it's a show. Anybody else? Councilor Miller, did he leave you any?
A little bit. One of the breakout rooms or study tours rather that I attended and found very interesting was the problem property initiative. So in 2023, Edmonton came up with their problem property initiative. It's a multi-agency initiative where if there's a property that's a derelict property and it's considered a safety risk to the community, if it gets reported to 3 of the 11 agencies that are on the PPI, so social services, fire, AHS, OH&S, safety codes, Edmonton police, there's a whole swag of them on there. And if three of these multi agencies receive a report, then the entire initiative is activated and they'll go in and they act really quick. And if the owner of the property doesn't make their property safe within a very short time frame, they PPI sends in people and they put up fencing and they board up the property and bring it up to the municipal safety standard and they'll bill that out to the owner. And there's actually some properties that we drove past on the bus tour that have been taken up by PPI for the time being, and they've got 24/7 security on these properties, and some of them are billing out at $20,000 to $45,000 a month to the owners. One of them has had 78 fires in it, and just recently did the owner start taking action and begin remediating. But I thought that was very interesting to see how such a large city deals with this kind of an issue on such a large scale. They also have a derelict resident tax subclass, which they just came out with in 2024. And within this subclass, they charge 3 times the general residential rate until the owner remediates. And then there's prorated tax forgiveness following the remediation. I also attended the Urban Canopy study tour. Edmonton has a very elaborate, sophisticated urban canopy program, and they have their own nursery. They grow about 80%, no, they grow about 20% of their own trees in there. And their goal is to have a 20% canopy cover by 2071. So this program just started in 2021 and they were at about 11% and now they're around 12 or 13% and they plant about 500,000 trees a year. So way, way bigger than what we're looking at, but it's very interesting to see how they, again, manage such a vast urban forest. And then, I mean, I've got pages and pages of notes, but a couple other that I thought were noteworthy are, well, I guess just one is left now. The Canadian Association for Housing Rights has some funding opportunities for nonprofits, and I'm not sure if that's on our radar already, but I thought that might be something to look into if there's nonprofits in the community that have ever expressed an interest in housing grants.
Good for that. That was actually, that's one thing about those conferences. There's so many interesting things in there, and how do you fit them all in? There's so many different categories. I'm glad you went to those two because I wanted to go to those two as well, but I had a different meeting to go on. So it's good that that urban canopy one I thought would be really interesting and see how Edmonton manages it, and because we definitely need to be looking at along the same line. And then that, well, of course, the derelict properties is something that we got to consider as well. Myself, I went on a collaboration tour, government and industry, to Fort Saskatchewan of all places, where where every inch of that place, both above the ground and underground, is being utilized, and how it's all getting, all they're shuffling. They're basically swishing from one side of the the yard to the other side of the yard, and all the industries are all collaborating there and everything. And it's a great thing to see that they have that opportunity and everything. But it's not like we're anywhere close to that. So that was kind of a it was kind of cool to see how busy that some places are right now, and how they manage to collaborate with their between the two, the industry and the municipality. So that was a good one. But yeah, and a lot of things, and like I say, they're all in on at the same time is what really picked me there. But yeah, so and the AI one is something, the AI, the possibilities with that AI, and like the people that were, WSP was involved in, engineering group was involved in, talking about it and everything like that. But like he said, it's not a replacement for people. It's a way to actually make your job easier and make you look better by accepting and utilizing these tools, because basically it's a new improved tool in your toolbox. And these things are ways to utilize them, and you can't just skip across the top of them. You have to learn how to use it, and you have to go right in and understand and commit your stuff to it. So that was another great one that I saw, and that's about it. I think, Councillor Clausen.
I'll just quickly note that one of the other, I think, very important parts of it is number one, you've got access to a whole bunch of agencies that provide some of the programming that we are depending on or are looking at, grants, things like that. Being able to have those conversations, and I was able to do that in a couple things, and also just other ideas from other municipalities, how they've done things. When you're sitting in a room and there's a larger discussion going on, and you're sitting beside somebody who lives in the same size of place, and they say, "Well, what are you guys doing?" And it opens up a really neat dialogue that sometimes you can come away with great things, or have other people take back some of the great things that we are doing to their communities. So.
And people from across the country, because we talked to people from Gander, Newfoundland, Niagara Falls, Timmins, all those kind of places. So it was interesting to see how it is getting handled there too. Read on, Kate. I don't think we need to have any kind of motion for that.
Your worship, could we just get a motion to accept this report as information?
Okay. Deputy Mayor Hardy.
I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the 2026 Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference Debrief Report as information.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Miller. All in favor? Okay. All right. Now, on to, where are we at? 5.2.1, our downtown revitalization. Speaking of that. Okay. Mr. Brownstein.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight we're going to do a presentation on the downtown revitalization on Center Street concept designs. This has been an ongoing project via the DARP development back in 2018. This was one of the streets is identified as being a revitalization piece for the downtown core. As part of this revitalization piece, we did engage a task force, or council asked to engage a task force to get some input from the local community, including businesses that will be impacted by this development. That task force was given a very specific scope to review as part of their terms of reference. What's being presented this evening is a combination of those discussions for council or for the committee's review, discussion, and possible consideration. Some of the key changes to the Center Street corridor are going to be wider sidewalks, or what's being proposed as wider sidewalks, pedestrian curb extensions at intersections, increased tree canopy, new street furniture including integrated seating areas, new ornamental street lights, and potential for parallel parking. Some of the financial implications and considerations to be discussed tonight is the approximate $10.2 million capital cost to do this upgrade. So this is Center Street from Riverside. From Riverside Drive to Railway Avenue West. Of that 10.2, 5.9 is essential infrastructure upgrades. So that is road and sidewalk repairs. So no matter how we look at this, there is a $5.2 million need to do upgrades along that corridor. Not included in this report, and I apologize I didn't get it in time, there's another $1 million worth of utility upgrades that need to be done as part of this project. So that'll be coming to council as a 2027 budget discussion as well. We are currently sitting at a $160,000 budget for the concept and detailed designs. So we have gone to the point of concept. The next steps will be detailed designs, and those detailed designs will take any comments or considerations coming from the committee this evening. This does align with two strategic policy alignments. So Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. So Pillar 1 provides sustainable services. So again, continue to upgrade our infrastructure in a transparent and supported by resilient organization and long-term financial planning. And Pillar 2, developing a healthy and thriving community. So again, providing that pedestrian-friendly corridor within the downtown area. There are two recommendations before the committee tonight. First recommendation is that the committee to whole accepts the Center Street redesign project concept design as presented and directs administration to continue to the detailed design phase for presentation at a future meeting of council. And that the committee to whole recommends that council the solution of the current downtown streetscape improvement task force and members appointed thereto be released from their appointments. There are ultimate directions within this report for the committee's consideration. Basically, the first honors of reaction is just basically you guys providing us with defined direction in regards to the concept drawings. That the committee of the whole accept the downtown revitalization Center Street concept design update as information. So again, no further action will be taken. And that the committee of the whole accepts the downtown revitalization Center Street concept design update as information and recommends to council that the redevelopment of Center Street be deferred until early 2027, and that furthermore that additional concept options be presented to the committee of the whole for review prior to proceeding to detailed design. So I am going to turn the discussion over to a colleague from ISL who is going to go over the PowerPoint presentation in regards to their concepts.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you, committee, for having us here tonight to present the Center Street Renewal Concept Design. I'm Kevin Dieterman, Senior Landscape Architect and Partner with ISL Engineering out of Edmonton, and have been working with Jared and administration on the development of the concept design over the last number of months, as well as participating in meetings and discussions with the task force. So the project origins, and Jared, feel free to jump in and correct me if I misspeak here, but the upgrading of Center Street was identified as a strategic priority in the downtown area redevelopment plan and is intended to act as a catalyst for the realization of the downtown vision. And the sidewalks, that's kind of one key origin point for the project. And the second one, which is less aspirational, more pragmatic, is that the sidewalks, roadways, and utilities within Center Street are reaching the end of their service life and need to be replaced. So there's what the town is aspiring to achieve through the DARP, and then what needs to happen to remain functional and operational. The project partners, who is all involved in moving the project forward to this point. So first, administration, which defined the project scope and budget, the intended outcomes, and facilitated the activities of the other project partners. The Downtown Streetscape Improvement Task Force, which was, as you'll recall, appointed to provide design guidance for the development of the Center Street streetscape. We have ISL, represented by myself tonight, which was a consultant hired to provide urban design and engineering services to complete the streetscape design, and some ancillary studies related to utilities, traffic, parking, and geotechnical investigations. Some of these were completed by subconsultants to ISL, but led by ISL in general. And then lastly, we have town council or committee tonight to receive the presentation from administration, as well as the report prepared by the task force, which will be presented following my presentation, and to provide direction to the aforementioned members on how to proceed with the project. So what has been done so far? Obviously, going back in time, just everything that's influenced this project was a development and approval of the downtown area redevelopment plan as a bylaw. There was a storm and sanitary sewer assessment completed, traffic and parking study to determine the capacity of the downtown parking inventory overall and the impacts of changes to Center Street. A pavement condition assessment to determine the lifespan, current condition, and quality of the pavement on Center Street. The streetscape concept design was prepared in an iterative process, which was combined with task force review meetings. So there was back and forth between the design team, which included administration and ISL, and the task force, receiving input and modifying the design approach as informed and as possible. And then the completion of estimate of construction costs, which you'll see at the end of this presentation. And that leads us to this evening. So in developing the concept, the RFP, the request for proposal provided by administration, provided clear direction on key components of the design, which were in alignment with DARP. And that included increasing sidewalk width, providing tree canopy, providing amenities for pedestrians, and the inclusion of parallel parking. Options were developed for 5 design elements to be reviewed and commented on by the task force at 4 separate meetings. And I apologize, this gets a little convoluted, so don't get hung up on the details of when and where, but feel free to ask questions. But the task force was tasked with providing input on a select number of items. One was street furniture options and lighting options. These were presented at the first meeting. This is kind of the look and feel components of the project. Then we also came back with alternate options at meeting 4 on those street furniture options and lighting options following a request from the task force. At meeting 2, we presented high-level opportunities related to sidewalk widths and design details, tree density and placement, and landscape improvements. You'll see in a little bit where meeting 3, what was involved in meeting 3, and as well meeting 5. But in general, we reviewed the design items that the task force was instructed to provide input on at these meetings. And at those meetings, we received support for one of the options for each of the 5 elements from the task force. So in general, we received majority support from the task force. The recommended concept incorporates the design elements which were supported by the task force. These design materials were, or the components that were informed by the task force meetings number 1 and 2 were prepared or compiled to prepare a rendered plan, and 4 perspective renderings, which we'll see, which were presented to the task force in meeting 3. So this was a compilation of those components to prepare and present a cohesive design, and which was supported by the task force, this recommended concept, though additional information was requested for site furniture such as benches, litter, and recycle receptacles and bollards, and for street lighting, which was presented at task force meeting number 4, which I mentioned previously. So this is quite a challenge to see, so I won't go into a lot of detail. We'll move forward and see larger versions of this, but the streetscape improvements, if I go from the right of the screen to the left, from Railway Avenue to Riverside Drive, consist of 4 blocks of improvements where we, in general, are providing curb extensions at each intersection, which narrows the roadway, the vehicle space, and widens the pedestrian realm. We are widening the sidewalks by converting the current angled parking to parallel parking. This is like a really key component of the discussion. Streetscape design is really fundamentally about space allocation. And in a existing roadway right-of-way, you're constrained. You're not going to widen the roadway by taking property in order to accomplish the best of everything or the optimal of all perspectives. So there's an exercise of identifying priorities and then allocating space in the best possible manner to achieve those priorities. And the identified priorities, as we understood them through the RFP and discussions, was about a pedestrian priority, safety, accessibility, tree canopy, amenities that support business and pedestrian activity throughout all seasons. And I'll just jump forward because I'm kind of going off script here a little bit. So here is a talk about reallocation of space to prioritize walkability and accessibility. So on the left side of the page, you'll see the existing conditions, which presents relatively narrow sidewalks, no trees, angled parking, and wider travel lanes. These are very schematic, by the way. They're not necessarily to scale. They're graphic in nature. The proposed cross-section on the right presents widened sidewalks, continuous tree planting in the public realm, parallel parking, and what we've called right-sized travel lanes. So this is a reallocation of space to the public realm to provide amenities and spaces that support pedestrian activity, accessibility, and business frontages. So the reallocation of space to provide walkability and accessibility shown here in this kind of blown up plan from Railway to 3rd. Sidewalks are wide enough for couples to pass each other and provide room for outdoor dining, temporary signage, or displays. So a limiting factor in the current sidewalk width is if you're walking together with your partner or your children or family and someone else is walking in a similar kind of group, someone's got to give way, go single file. Well, everyone's got to give way and go single file to pass each other. And as I'm sure you know better than anyone around here, during the busy summer months when you have lots of tourist activity with families and people kind of not being familiar with their environment and looking around, that additional space could provide great benefit for accessibility, people with strollers, walkers, wheelchairs, to navigate kind of intuitively and conveniently. The furnishing zone, which is between the sidewalk and the parking, provides an organized space for trees, streetlights, and furniture, as well as providing space for exiting and entering parked cars without those door swings impacting the sidewalk, the pedestrian throughway. It provides kind of a safe, separated area and a spot to place all the essential infrastructure of the street in a, I keep using the word organized, but that's a key component of it, and it separates the sidewalk from the vehicle zone. So it provides kind of a literal and implied buffer of what's pedestrian space and what's vehicle space increasing this sense of comfort and safety. Right-sized travel lanes promote slower vehicle speeds, so they're not defined concretely now, but they're wide enough for you know, some of the bigger trucks that we expect to see in a rural municipality, kind of dually trucks with big side mirrors on them, but not so wide that there's a sense of freeway happening here where it would induce speeding or higher vehicle speeds. That's also supported by the curb extensions at each intersection. By narrowing that vehicle space, you are constraining the sense of ability to travel in a vehicle at high speed. And I'll get to more of that later. And then parallel parking eliminates the need to back up into traffic. So having parallel parking on a busy angle parking on a busy street presents some operational challenges in terms of people pull in frontward to the angle parking and then need to back up into traffic to exit that parking stall, often with limited visibility because of the vehicles that are parked on either side. So it's not insurmountable by any means. It happens in a lot of municipalities, but wouldn't be considered best practice this day and age to include angle parking on a busy downtown street. So the objectives here are to establish a pedestrian priority on Center Street that enables users to safely and comfortably access the businesses and amenities on the street, and to increase the visual appeal of downtown and establish a distinct identity for Center Street. So these improvements will create a consistent aesthetic for Center Street in downtown, which will be recognizable, and provide convenient on-street parking to support businesses and residents. So we fully appreciate the importance of convenient parking and endeavored to provide as much as possible using parallel parking to support businesses. One thing that's not mentioned on here is providing space on the sidewalk that supports businesses to spill out onto the street. So things like cafe patios, display tables, signage, like sandwich board signage, can really go a long way to increasing vibrancy and vitality of commercial streets and encourage users to come downtown and experience something unique in Drumheller. Here is a rendering of what that looks and feels like. So sidewalks are wide enough for people to pass. The furnishing zone neatly organizes trees and streetlights and furniture. And then the parallel parking provides that buffer between the pedestrian realm and roadway and eliminates the need to back up into traffic. Curb extensions at intersections, the objective here is to increase pedestrian safety and create space for landscaping and amenities. It shortens the crossing distance for pedestrians because it's bringing that curb line and the curb ramp about another 2.5 meters or so out into the intersection. So especially for people with mobility impairments or seniors who just aren't moving as quickly, it reduces the amount of time that folks are exposed to traffic. It promotes slower vehicle travel speeds. It makes pedestrians more visible for drivers while they're waiting at the curb ramp because they're brought kind of closer to where the vehicles are aligned, but they're still safely located up on top of the curb at a curb ramp. And those curb extensions create space for planting beds and seating nodes. So it allows the incorporation of greenery, tree planting, and comfortable spaces for people to sit and rest, gather, linger, enjoy the adjacent businesses. And these curb extensions can also include site accesses to increase safety. So I don't know. Yeah, you'll notice on some of the curb extensions, like at 2nd Avenue, I think that's, sorry, my eyes aren't very good. There are multiple site accesses located on the curb extension. So site and alley accesses are retained. The objective here is to preserve vehicular accesses to businesses' parking lots while improving pedestrian safety. So we had a discussion with administration early in the project about how important it was to preserve these vehicular accesses off of Center Street into parking lots rather than closing them and using that space to provide additional on-street parking. Drumheller downtown has got a really great connected network of alleys and streets in the grid format. Makes it highly connected, walkable, accessible for vehicles and people driving. Technically, you could, functionally, you could close all the vehicular accesses off Center Street and have people access parking lots off the alleys. That would increase the amount of parallel parking available. It would decrease the amount of pedestrian vehicle conflict that's present by having those vehicles cross sidewalks. And it would improve the look of the street to, in my opinion. The one exception would be the fire hall. Obviously, it's got, you know, very definitive functional requirements that fire trucks are going to cross the sidewalk. You can see here and the alleyways, the accesses there would need to be retained as well, just to keep that, that function going. So we would endeavor to right size the access width to current standards. Some of them are quite wide. We'll narrow those up as much as possible to limit their impact to the sidewalk and locate accesses within curb extensions where possible to improve sight lines. Next element of the concept is a Riverside Drive Plaza, we're calling it for now, and the objective here is to establish a gateway to Center Street that provides a better connection to the Civic District and the pathway network, improve pedestrian mobility, and create a space for gathering and special events. The approach used to utilize that is narrowing Riverside Drive towards the intersection of Center Street, which promotes lower vehicle speeds, and allowing for the creation of a sidewalk and treed boulevard on the north side. Today it's quite generous in width, and there's not a lot of pedestrian amenity on the north side of the street adjacent to the arena and the cenotaph, and heading to the civic facilities to the west. The right turn lane that's currently on Center Street is removed and the space is converted to plaza. So all the right turn movements would come out of a single lane rather than having that slip lane dedicated. Curb extensions are added on Center Street, which again promotes a pedestrian priority. The entirety of the intersection is proposed to be raised to the elevation of the sidewalk, which allows the roadway to function as an extension of the public realm. So vehicles would come up little ramps as they enter the intersection. The curbs are defined by bollards, and it promotes slower travel speeds. But the core benefit of doing that is when you have larger events like Canada Day, Hockey Day in Canada, if that ever happens, something at the arena that's occurring, you could close that entire intersection to vehicle traffic for the day. And those plaza spaces, sidewalk spaces, the Cenotaph Plaza, the arena, all of that can spill out onto the street in this intersection and act as one large contiguous public space. Smaller scale gathering spaces are provided on the west side of the intersection with planting and seating nodes. So the flexible paved area is located on the east side of the intersection across from the Cenotaph Plaza. So there's a combination of open, flexible hard space and comfortable planted, shaded seating and gathering spaces. So a diversity of opportunities for use there. And the sidewalk that heads to the west connects to the information center, the aquatic center, and ultimately to the trail network. Here's a view of the intersection at Riverside Drive Plaza. So the flexible gathering space provided on the east, the raised intersection, all paved in the same material as the sidewalks to theoretically concrete, so that it it looks and feels and acts as a continuation of the public realm. And then bollards are used to define the roadway and allow for unobstructed pedestrian movements. Another component of the concept is at Miners Memorial Park and Town Hall. So enhancing the entrance to Town Hall and defining that entry with special paving and providing space for seating and bike parking out front there, potential for flagpoles or other kind of elements, just denoting, the kind of the importance of this civic building to the activity and life of town in the valley. Access to the fire hall is retained and no crosswalk is provided on the north leg of that intersection. Just again, understanding the importance and functional requirements of a fire hall. And then Miners Memorial Park is kind of conceptually brought into the street with extensive planting and seating nodes being provided in a curb extension. And design components of the park could be brought into the sidewalk as well, just really extending that green space and creating a civic frontage to these two lots. Accessibility improvements, so it's really critical in street design when you have the opportunity to modify an existing street, that accessibility moves to the very top of the list of priorities. And we do so by providing crosswalks at each leg of the intersection wherever possible, so that people don't have to route themselves too far to cross the street. That crosswalks are aligned with the sidewalks to minimize navigation requirements for those with vision impairments. So you want to have everything lined up with each other so that movements are straight rather than circuitous. And using tactile warning surface indicators at curb ramps, those are those little dimple plates that you see so that people with vision impairments who use canes can feel when they're about to hit a crosswalk and stop before they walk out into traffic. And then obviously widened sidewalks accommodate mobility aids. Tree planting, landscaping, and lighting is another priority. In the DARP, tree canopy was identified as a key priority in downtown improvements. And the goals are the objectives to make downtown more attractive to residents, businesses, and visitors, providing amenities that enhance their experience, creating a safe and comfortable pedestrian environment by providing shade and buffering winds, and improving the ecological performance of downtown by incorporating natural systems. So the tree planting becomes quite involved and is not an insignificant component of the project budget when done properly. In my opinion, if there is a priority in terms of investing in the improvements and it comes down to like furniture, paving, lighting, fancy or higher end finishes versus planting trees in a really good way, you prioritize trees. Everything else can be improved or upgraded over time, but the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago. There's just immeasurable benefits provided by trees, and a good set of street trees will create a comfortable and distinctive environment. I mean, so much of the environment is represented by the businesses that front it, and a good set of trees encourages people to linger and stay because it makes it comfortable. It separates you from traffic, it provides shade, and it just creates this kind of bucolic would be the word, kind of environment and appearance of the street. So we plant trees today in structural soil cells. They're these big kind of milk crate systems that go beneath the sidewalk, full of good, rich soil. They have access to moisture, nutrients, and air, the tree roots do. And so they don't seek that good stuff in cracks in the sidewalk and in utilities. So you spend a lot of money, to be blunt, on stuff that's hidden below the surface in order to provide these really amazing, long-lived, mature canopy trees on the street. And in order to fit these trees and that structure, below grade and kind of the scale and breadth of a big mature canopy tree, it helps to have space in the public realm, like wider sidewalks, a furnishing zone, etc. Pedestrian lighting, is combined with the street lighting. So we try to minimize clutter by having 2 fixtures on 1 pole. The fixtures are full cutoff, so they're dark sky compliant. Furnishings such as bike racks, benches, and litter and recycling receptacles are provided regularly along each block, so that it's convenient for people and the amenities they need are present without having to travel too far for them. Here's a view of from street level at the east side of the Riverside Drive Plaza, where we're showing large canopy trees providing shade, buffering winds, and establishing a pedestrian scale. Planting beds of native and ornamental grasses and perennials are protected by a raised edger. So I'm going through this on another project where we designed and built something that is robust and sustainable. And by sustainable, I mean it's built to thrive and do so with minimal ongoing maintenance and input and cost. Alberta has really, and urban spaces in Alberta have really harsh climates for growing and maintaining plant material. And so we almost always, we always start by recommending you use native or hardy species that are drought tolerant, that are salt tolerant, that can handle a variety of sun exposure and moisture conditions, because it varies so wildly and municipalities are so challenged this day and age to adequately fund landscape maintenance. And the benefit that infrastructure provides is really what creates the identity of the street and the community in a big way. Like obviously the businesses and the people, but when you look at your infrastructure, it's not curves and roadways and sidewalks. It's kind of the greenery, the parks, how well kept it is, and how it looks. And throughout my entire career, I've struggled to have ornamental plant material thrive and survive. So we really lean heavily into native indigenous species and drought tolerant stuff, but it doesn't look like a garden center landscape, which can be a real struggle for good chunks of the population to understand and appreciate that it's not just weeds and unmown grass. No, it's supposed to look like that, and it does so because when you go outside of the municipality and you drive around in the rural landscape, that's the material you're seeing or something very similar, and it works because it's native here and it can withstand the conditions. So I'm really belaboring this because the decisions we make early and throughout design, if this project moves forward, once the material goes in the ground and the public sees it, they're not just seeing a pretty picture that they kind of gloss over, and they see native grasses and forbs and stuff that looks a little wilder. You're going to hear about it. And so I want to ensure everyone is adequately informed about the whys of that approach and the benefits of it, and how it's really strongly correlated to operational costs and kind of perpetual maintenance needs. Furnishings, this is something we worked through in a couple of iterations with the task force. So providing combination litter and recycle receptacles, bollards with reflective strips. I think where we're kind of aiming and landing is on flexible bollards that have a reflective strip. Security bollards are another option that are like filled with concrete and can withstand traffic impacts, but they're damaging to cars and they get damaged when they're hit by cars. So there's some cost to keeping those up. And then obviously bike racks and benches. We endeavor to provide or recommend furnishings that are part of like a set. So you don't have a bike rack that has one form and material and then a bench that has something totally different. It's important that things have a cohesive look and feel and are comfortable and usable. So that is the reason for the wood bench. Again, another thing, I'll heavily advocate for wood as a seating surface. It's more comfortable, especially during the shoulder seasons, colder seasons. It's more maintainable, can be sanded out if there's graffiti on it. Slats can be replaced versus other like metal or concrete materials are much harder to maintain. Which leads us to the built to suit furnishings. Another thing we often recommend, it comes at some cost, but creating elements that are unique only to this place. And so for Center Street, what we're proposing is to kind of express the geological history of the area through rammed earth or colored concrete seating walls. And then which would reference sedimentary layers found throughout the Badlands. And then the seat walls are kind of embedded in the planting to create comfortable spaces. And then they could be topped with a wood seating surface. Another thing about doing built to suit is you can have local fabricators construct the products and maintain them. If you use typical materials like standard steel fittings that can be welded, or standard bolt heads and screw heads, nominal lumber dimensions, etc., things can be maintained by unskilled labor without having to order something from a special wood slat from a Michigan bench provider, for instance. So custom design sounds scary and more expensive, but when you factor in kind of the benefit it provides to local manufacturers and long-term maintenance, there's a distinct advantage in my opinion. So the construction cost estimate was broken down into two segments. Riverside Drive to 3rd Ave, and then 3rd Ave to Railway, and in 3 categories. So roadway upgrades, which includes all the hard surfacing, sidewalks, curb and gutter, roadway, and then landscaping, which would be all the tree planting and kind of landscape plantings, open planting beds. And then furnishings, which would be all the benches, litter receptacles, built to suit elements, etc. There is a contingency applied given the level of design we're at, giving you a net total there at the bottom right of just over estimated cost, construction cost of just over 10 million. And that is it. Apologies for not asking for an extension on the 10 minutes, and I know I went way over. Yeah.
So, Your Worship, before we start engaging the committee on questions, I was hoping that we could have the chair of the task force come up and preside his report, and then we can start to engage the committee on questions, if that's okay with you, Your Worship.
Okay, bring it on.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrew Berdahl. I was elected as the chair of the task force at one of our early meetings. Thanks for that, fellas, ladies. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Administration. It's nice to see you. Thank you for your attention. It's been a long meeting. I figured that sitting here for 2 hours, you could probably notice how stiff I was as I got up. If you could spare another 5 minutes, I'd appreciate your attention. Okay. So you've heard a lot about the task force, and Mr. Dieterman was very thorough. Nice work, by the way. And he has the view of an architect, and he's very well spoken, so I appreciate both those things. My recommendations are focused on the work of the committee, which was really rather narrow. Do we still have the ISL slides from just a moment ago? Yeah. Can we put up the process slide? Project process. Yes, that's it. Everyone sees it? Good. Keep that in mind as I speak. Drumheller Town Council passed the Downtown Streetscape Improvement Task Force Bylaw 2225 in June of 2025. So your predecessors. with the purpose of providing design guidance for the development of our downtown streetscape. Everybody's in favor. The Downtown Streetscape Improvement Task Force, quite a mouthful, so I'm just going to say task force from now on, has been responsible for the review and consideration of a streetscape design provided by the town of Drumheller administration, and the design essentially is the one that you were just shown and walked through in some detail. The task force was also tasked to provide support for community engagement related to the design by participation in associated activities. 10 members of the task force, including 6 business operators and 4 members at large, all residents of Drumheller, met throughout the fall of 2025 and through the spring of 2026. At first establishing the scope and sequence of our work, and then methodically reviewing the elements of the proposed design. And in those meetings, the task force reviewed and discussed the items, many of the items that Mr. Dieterman just touched upon: street furniture options, tree density and placement, landscaping improvements, street light options, and sidewalk widths and details. You'll notice, according to the project process list, it really is just that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th element that our members were tasked with reviewing, which leaves all the others for the people in this room and their future public engagement endeavors. The task force was able to provide a variety of suggestions regarding each of these elements just mentioned with the project architect, Mr. Dieterman, and those suggestions were reflected in later iterations of the project design. I'm going to say 6 meetings and about, well, 15 hours of meetings. Right. So here's the thing. There's a clear consensus within the task force in favor of developing a streetscape emphasizing people rather than cars. Many of the proposed design features will make our downtown streets safer and more pleasant for residents, local businesses, and their patrons. Once completed, residents of all ages would find our downtown a more comfortable and enjoyable place to visit and spend time. That said, the matter of sidewalk widths and related design details were of distinct interest and contention for our group throughout the process. Of all the elements that we've discussed so far, it was the only one in which we were not effectively unanimous. And we were certainly not unanimous on that element. That tension likely reflects the broader community regarding this or any similar streetscape project and should be expected in the future. It's clear that our town council will need to make deliberate and coordinated efforts to address parking and accessibility concerns from community members who live and work in downtown prior to any final approvals for any such projects. Given the importance and the value of any such projects, which will obviously include considerations for infrastructure renewal and long-term budgets, strong and credible community consultation and outreach by town council will be essential in paving the way, no pun intended, actually now I think that was, for the successful completion of this or any other similar downtown development projects. Here endeth the lesson. You don't have to applaud. It's fine. Okay.
That's it. That's it.
Would you like some more? I can sing.
You're gonna get the cane out.
You don't know. Don't rush the judgment on that.
No, that's good. I thought you were gonna go on a little bit there, but that's
Oh, you wanted
good.
more? Can I have an extra 10 minutes?
Yeah, well,
Everybody else got them.
if
Yeah,
you
I
want
hear
to
ya.
talk.
All right. No, that's it for me. I'm ready for questions.
Anyone got some questions for him? Go ahead. All right. Deputy Mayor.
Jared, you mentioned a number at the start for the underground infrastructure. I missed it. What was that?
Through the chair to Councilor Hardy, that was, it's gonna be approximately $1 million. So that's to address our sanitary sewer system and our drainage system. Yep.
Councilor Zawitsky.
Thank you for the presentation. And I'd like to thank all the people on the committee. especially for sitting through our council meeting. That's a terrible thing to put on you, but thank you very much. So a couple of concepts, and I know former councillor Berdal would remember this. We have done many downtown revitalization kind of studies and projects and plans in the past. And one of the things that has always come up has been kind of a consistency of view. From my experience, we've had a lot of the businesses downtown that kind of like this, and then other businesses kind of like this, and some of the businesses kind of like this, and some of the. So from your impression, from you people with the consensus of the businesses downtown, would most of the people on Center Street, virtually all of the businesses, are they kind of on board with, have they seen this and are they kind of on board with this? What would be your comment?
Well, I can't speak to all the businesses, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the first public showing of this information. So that's why the people in this room are gonna have to make an effort to do more public outreach and get some of the feedback that you just asked for.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I think it's wonderful. I really love the design. I hate angle parking for one thing. Anyway, that's just my personal view. But I guess the other thing that council is looking at as well is that something has to be done because a lot of the infrastructure down there is failing. I mean, the lights are falling over, the lights are shorting out. I mean, there's huge infrastructure issues that have to be addressed, whether we do this or whether we do. The streets are falling apart outside of town hall here. This is terrible paving. There's underground pipes that have to be fixed. There's sidewalks that have to be fixed. So I guess I'm looking at this as kind of an impetus to change some of this infrastructure that's needing to be fixed, whether we do this particular plan or any plan. This stuff has to be done. The one comment I would make, however, with our consultant, so I just had the opportunity last week to spend a fair amount of time in downtown Lacombe, which is very similar to this kind of concept design. I mean, you look at it and it's like, wow, that looks really nice. Last summer, I also had the opportunity to go to Revelstoke and view their design. Now, the interesting thing about Revelstoke is that they're more of a 4-season kind of destination, and their downtown has also kind of planned for winter. Now I look at all the trees and all the plants and all the stuff here, and it looks good. I mean, this is midsummer kind of pictures, and I'm just wondering, is there consideration being given to kind of a winter, like one of the things that we are trying to do in Drumheller is extend the tourist season, and we're getting a few things going on, like the Cold Bones, for example, downtown is bringing hundreds of people downtown. The Festival of Lights. So there are a few things going on downtown in the winter, and I'm just wondering, has that been part of the consideration?
Yeah, come on.
Through the chair to Councillor Zariski. Yeah, it's easy to say now. It's embedded in it's embedded in the fundamental design decisions that we're making on the street. So the tree planting and landscaping, the tree planting in particular helps to buffer winds during the winter, which can help create microclimates. The planting, especially when you use the native and ornamental grasses, it kind of stands up in the winter and provides some visual appeal. The solar orientation, like the way that we developed the concept for the Riverside Drive Plaza and having the flexible kind of program space on the east side is to take advantage of the western sunlight in the shoulder season. So you have lower sun from the west in the fall and the winter that would be cast on that open space. So if you did have an outdoor activity, it's got some solar exposure. Really considering snow clearing. This, again, super pragmatic, but it's a big part of where we live in snow clearing and providing space for that snow clearing to happen and protecting from the salt loading that occurs during winter, because businesses, just a matter of life, apply salt to the sidewalk to get rid of the ice to make it safe and comfortable. And then the lighting. We didn't go into a lot of detail in lighting, but there is opportunity and some desire in reading through the DARP in a bit more detail to provide more kind of ancillary lighting to just the street lighting and the pedestrian lighting. So that's a big part of winter, is how well lit it is, and the quality of that light as well, and the temperature of the light. So speccing warm temperature lights so that are more yellow than blue, like a cool temperature. And then again, providing space and opportunity for businesses to spill out is a big part of it. Like, how much space and comfortable amenity can we provide on the street that enables the businesses to be active throughout the year? So space for patios, you could, put out patios with blankets or tables and cafe type setting with portable gas heaters, and extend those seasons, especially when you have the good solar exposure on the east side of the street.
Anybody else? Councillor Miller?
Thank you. Through the chair, just to touch on the snow removal again, if the streets were to be narrower and the sidewalks wider, what would our snow removal from the streets look like? Would we still be able to use the windrow method, or would that be looking at throwing snow onto the sidewalks to remove it? How would that be looking for us?
So through the chair to council, the matter, our current snow and ice control policy actually required us to remove all snow from the downtown core. So we would actually continue to remove that snow. It would be windrowed to the middle of the road as we do currently now, and the snow blower comes in and we truck it all out. So that'll continue throughout this redesign process.
Thank you very much for that. I was also wondering, has there been a clear comparison done between how many parking spots we currently have downtown and how many we would have with the proposed redesign of our downtown streets?
So through the chair to council, there are currently no. That'll be more addressed in our detailed design, the conceptual designs, because of the uncertainty in regards to access points, et cetera, that are on the committee's docket tonight. Having that count is going to be difficult. So once that philosophy and that concept design is determined tonight, then we can provide that information as part of the detailed design package coming back to council at a later date.
Okay, yeah, that's something that's very important for council to know if we're going to make a decision on this. So I lived in Europe for 6 years, and I love a beautiful downtown. I love cafes on the street. I love urban canopy. I love all that stuff. That said, we have to be realistic with the budget that we're working with. $10.2 million for one block is an exorbitant amount of money for this municipality. And this presentation that we've seen tonight seems to me like a Cadillac option. Like it's probably top tier of what we could possibly have in Drumheller. And I was just wondering if we could get a more practical, more cost-effective proposal. Some things like eliminating the colored concrete. I know if you're going to have to do repairs, concrete fades over time, so that can be more difficult, more expensive to fix. As nice as additional lighting would be, that's an additional cost as well. So just things like that, if we might be able to look at a slightly turned down or even a much turned down version of this to take into consideration.
If I may, through the chair to Councillor Miller, the 10.2 was for 3 blocks, 10.2 million, just point of clarification.
I understand that. I'm just meaning from there all the way down to there. That's just
Yep.
one roadway.
Sure. Councillor McNeil.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I just have a few comments and questions that I'd like to make. Overall, I think that the concept design is excellent. But I do agree with Councillor Miller that this price tag is just too much for our community to be able to manage. And so I was thinking of ways where we could look at, say, more of a more economical option. One consideration that I have is really with respect to Riverside Drive. And I'm concerned about narrowing that roadway because I see how that is such an important corridor for both east and west traffic, and it provides access to the bridge. And so I feel that just given the fact that we have the main facilities there, the arena, the BCF, and then as well the world's largest dinosaur, and a lot of parking there. When there are events that take place there, that Riverside Drive, it can get very congested, and if it's narrowed, I think that that congestion could be more of an issue. I also feel that just given what is there currently, I think that we don't really need another plaza space at this time. I really do want to encourage people to walk, and I love that concept of more pedestrian friendly. So that's just, an observation that I made. I was also thinking about the width of, narrowing the actual, as you say, right size. And you mentioned that a dually truck could fit on one lane. I just want to make sure then that emergency vehicles do have adequate access, particularly where there are those curb cut areas. So I see you're nodding your head, so I presume that's a yes. So that's good. The other piece that I wanted to mention, and I was wondering about, what is the current width of the sidewalks on Center Street right now?
Through the chair to Councillor McNeil, I want to say it's about 3 meters. I apologize for not having that information right at hand, but that's from building face to curb. And that includes the space that is taken up by street furniture like light poles, hydrants, signage, etc. So the functional width would be less than that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Also, Mr. Berdahl, thank you very much for sharing information from the task force. And I do want to say thank you to the task force members for their time. And I realize that's a significant amount of volunteer time. So thank you for that. And I feel that some of the comments and feedback that I'd heard from other business owners in the downtown, I agree with you. It's so important that there is further consultation because it seemed to me from the feedback that I heard that other business owners felt left out from this process. And so I think it is so important to get their feedback and yes, to really provide that throughout. I agree with you that we need to do more public consultation on this, especially with such a significant outlay of money. So that's absolutely very important. And I just checked my notes because they were kind of all over the place. And I just one further question for you, Mr. Berdahl. Were there any discussions with any of the business owners throughout this process for the task force?
Well, as I mentioned, 6 of the members were local business operators, and so they made up the majority of the people who are working in this endeavor.
Okay, so that it was within the task force. There were no other businesses included outside of the task force. Is that correct?
That's correct. The task force was 10 members, four members at large, and 6 members who were also community members, all of us citizens of Drumheller.
And then, sorry, one further question. Were all of the task force members business owners or, within Center Street, or did they also include Third Avenue?
The latter, actually.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Councillor Hanson?
Okay, well, I guess I can start with saying it's a good start. No doubt about that. I'm kind of going to go backwards here because what's most fresh in my mind. A good example of the lighting, you were talking about dual lighting, so there will be an increased cost, obviously in power, that needs to be figured out depending on how many lights are being put in. Not saying it's not a good idea, but it's an additional expense. The Miners Park at Town Hall, where it shows the narrowing of the street. Now, one of the issues that we already have is we have tourists coming through here with 40-foot motorhomes, and they're going to try and make that corner. I think we're going to create bigger issues, bottleneck and stuff like that down in there. And looking at the fire hall, I know they're more than capable of driving it, but it's also going to choke them back for turning around their ladder truck and stuff for backing it into the fire hall. These are just my observations. I'll get the right one. One of the other issues is drainage from the arena. If you're raising the street up, we already got water running across the road there. So is that going to create a flooding problem at the arena, or do we have to come up with another solution for that? Okay. The curb extensions, are they going to be wedged or lowered all the way around so people can get off on the whole curb, or is it just where the crosswalks are? There will be. Is that where those ones are?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Hanson. They'll just be lowered at the crosswalk alignment, not all the way around, which helps to reduce the incidence of vehicles tracking across the crosswalks where pedestrians are expected to be protected.
Okay, thank you for that. And believe it was asked to, but again, how many parking spots are we going to lose prior to that? Some of our downtown parking is already full as it is now, so that are behind the businesses. On Third there, like the one by the Badlands Historical Society there, that one's filled right up every day. And the other one that was kind of confused me a little bit was the fact that there was a study on the pavement condition. Well, when we're redoing the underground infrastructure, it'll have to be repaved anyway. So that one seemed a little out of place to me. And then finally, with the people that was on the task force, from what I understand, now don't hold me to this, but what I understand, there wasn't a whole bunch of conversation with some of the people that were on the task force or the people that were on the task force. They thought that they were left out of some of the decisions and finalization that was made up to the report that was given to us tonight. I'm hoping that as we go forward with this, that we get input from everybody a little better than what we have, so that the taxpayers and the businesses that are going to be dealing with this, I understand we're never going to make everybody happy 100%, but we definitely have to try and work with them. I think a little better than what has been, a little more open communication with the business owners of the downtown, since they're the ones that are going to be affected mostly by it, but by the development plan. Now, of course, the majority of this is going to be taxpayers is going to take a hit on it. So, like I said, I'm hoping as we move on that there's more communication and that people don't feel left out. And I definitely want to put it out there that if there are people that have issues with some of this stuff, please let us know, contact us. You can find all of us on the Drumheller website, so you can talk to us and get a hold of us, or, you know, phone us. Most of you know us, and we want to talk to you about this because it's everybody's money that we'll be spending on this, and the decisions comes from all of us. And thank you for your presentation. It's appreciated.
Anybody else? Councillor McNeil?
Thank you, Councillor Hanson, for your comments there. And it also reminded me, just in the spirit of transparency, another question that did come to me is, would the minutes from the task force meetings be made available to the downtown business owners or to the public? Is that a possibility?
If I may jump in through the chair, I can answer that one just because I have the terms of reference for this committee up, which was passed through the bylaw that was referenced earlier. So in that bylaw, which was passed by the previous council, specifically under confidentiality and conflict of interest, it states under section 8.1, the discussions and deliberation of the task force are confidential. Upon council's acceptance of the report, final report, members of the task force shall return all documents and information gathered during their work to the staff of the town of Drumheller for suitable disposal and or archival.
Thank you for that clarity.
Councillor Kalapa?
Thank you for the presentation. Overall, I think it looks like a really nice plan. I do understand some of the comments coming from the task force that, there will need to be some more engagement, but the fact that now that the plan is actually public, we can do that now. I think that that's the main thing. We can't really discuss these things until we know what they are. I wholeheartedly like the thoughts that have been put into this. I do understand the idea that yes, it is a lot of money, but the longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. If there are, if we do proceed with this, that if there are some things that we can shave, great. But no, I'm very supportive of this. We've been through, some of these thoughts about parking in 2010. There was a very robust engagement with iTrans, just in regards to that one block alone. And there, people were rightly concerned. But what we've seen in the end of that is that it worked. We went to parallel parking. There's very, very successful businesses that have thrived along that stretch. And so, there are concerns, but let's not be scared of them and let's deal with them head on.
Councillor Zawierski?
Yeah, just one last comment for me. I guess I want to reiterate that whether we like it or not, we're going to have to spend millions on this area to simply redo the lights, redo the road, redo the sidewalks, because they are failing. So you have to balance that against this big project number. We're going to be spending a lot of money on that area, whether we do this project or nothing. Just simply redo the sidewalks the way they are, redo the lights the way they are, redo. So that's the way I look at it. Like 10 million, well, yeah, big amount. But just to simply do the replacement for the infrastructure that we have now is going to be millions. And we can't not do it. The street is failing, the sidewalks are failing, the lights are failing. We don't have a choice. We're going to have to do that.
Can I talk now? All right. Okay, so, like Tom says, everything is, we need to relook at how everything's done. And I think this is a good initial discussion going on here. I mean, we haven't been a part of the streetscape discussion here at all. And a lot of the businesses haven't been, there's some of the businesses are involved and others are not. So that isolation, the feeling of isolation in this whole thing is something that we've got to include now. It like I say, to me it's a good initial discussion. We can start working with it. We can start thinking about it because, like Tom says, I mean, to repay, to redo all this stuff just by itself is probably $8-9 million, and this is just window dressing a lot of it. One of the things that I really took away from here is the trees that you're talking about, planting trees. And what were you saying, in it, some sort of a containment vault or something?
We call them structural soil cells or soil cells.
Okay, yeah, because to my mind, part of our problem that we have downtown with our trees and in any downtown treed area is the roots. The roots heave. They get the concrete moving, and they're part of the problem down there. Whether it's even sidewalks or whether it's right down into your infrastructure, because they go after the roots, go after the pipes and stuff. So these vaults, I'd be pretty interested to hear about these vaults because. To me, putting trees on a sidewalk or under a sidewalk is you're either going to kill the tree or the tree's going to heave the sidewalks, right? So that's one thing I was thinking about. Another thing I was thinking about is, and it was I got it from the head of Travel Alberta was here, David, and he said that you go to other places, and he says everywhere's got a fancy new downtown and everything. It's all whitewashed. He says, and he said you come down here, and he says your downtown's got soul, man. And I think that's the thing that we got to try and maintain is the soul aspect of our downtown core. We don't want to root that out of there because like on an old car, I mean it's only original once, right? And I know there's some of the businesses or some of the buildings and some of the things we got to do some things with everything, but you know if we could somehow come up with a way to retain our soul of the area. Some of these extensions I kind of like. I kind of get what you're doing with them there, but I do worry about our fire trucks going in and around there. And the back alley, cutting the back alleys off. I don't know. I mean, you talk to your delivery drivers and ask them what they think about cutting off those back alley accesses, and they're going to lose their minds because they're having a hard enough time. And I understand your access of your trying to save the residents. We could throw up barriers there so they can't go back and forth all the time with vehicles when the trucks aren't there. But when the trucks are delivering stuff, they need access. And we don't need to create a pain in the butt for them in another way. Um, what else? What else do they have a look at here? Just basically some of those things sticking out for the sidewalks would just be for people to drive over. It's gonna happen. But I mean, I don't mean to put it down. I just mean like just realistically looking at it. Um, like I said, the snow clearing on the sidewalks. So if you grew your sidewalks, whose job is it to clean the sidewalks? That's my question. Is it businesses now that are shoveling the sidewalks? So we gotta, if it is the businesses and we're gonna create a larger sidewalk, we need to be able to talk to them about it. But you know what? You're right. They are 3 meters. I did pace them off, and the reason I paced them off because when I went to Calgary, I checked out what their sidewalks were, and they're the exact same thing. 10 feet, virtually 10 feet, right? So I think there's room for some of this stuff. I think we got to manage it. We got to figure out how we can, now that we can discuss it. Now let's have some discussions about these things and let's find ways to make people palatable for everybody, right? You're like you said, you're not going to make everybody happy. We do need to replace the infrastructure that's under there. We do need to replace a lot of the light posts were being held up. I mean, in council, how many times do we go out? We can't go out the door and people are like, where's the bike racks? Where's the recycling bins? How come all our garbage cans are different? You know, and we know that that's all been on the, they've been holding those back because this is coming and they want to make it a one-time expense. I totally get it, right? So, you know, we'll get going. We'll talk about other, you know, things. I'm sure you'll be hearing back from us about things and trying to, you know, establish a way that we can do this, because it does need to get done, even as much as our front steps. I don't know if you talked about that at all, is raising the sidewalks at the, in front of the businesses, because a lot of the businesses are just down, you know, they got little steps on there and that makes them non-accessible. So if you were to raise that sidewalk a little bit, then it's a straight across, straight shot in the business doors. So that is something to consider for down there as well. But that's my take on this big project. It's a great project. It is a lot of things. I understand understand the intent of it. I understand the urgency of it because we do have that infrastructure that needs to get taken care of. But we, you know, we don't want to whitewash our downtown. We don't want to cut the soul out of it here. So we got to figure out a way to do that. And hopefully, you seem like a pretty reasonable guy, and you know, hopefully you can come along, like she's saying, she's the Cadillac over here. We're looking at the Cadillac. Find a Ford, but you know, get us an LTD or something, right? Something that's got a nice, just some nice trim level, right? And that's about it for me. Anybody else? Would you like to say anything to that?
Yeah, if I may, I just want to thank the committee for the comments. I think there's a number of really astute comments we received. Yeah, this is to Councillor Miller through the chair. This is definitely an aspirational plan. Like it is looking to achieve the objectives and goals laid out in the DARP in the best possible way for the town of Drumheller and the valley overall. So you're right, it's a good observation. There are ways to trim back, but I'd also acknowledge that some of the other comments where, you know, the bulk of the cost going into the project is applied to kind of basic infrastructure. And as I mentioned, you know, the tree planting is costly, but highly recommended. But certainly there are ways to trim. I would just caution around expectations of being able to trim 30 to 50% off the project cost. In my experience, that level of savings comes at a reduction in scope, not by refining fit and finish. And then the only other thing, if I may, I got the sense from my friend Andrew that maybe I almost put him to sleep through my thoroughness in the presentation. But I did so purposefully, and I want to thank you for your grace in allowing me to be so thorough. Because I think it's really important when presenting a project like this that there's some capacity built with the audience to understand all of the considerations that go into making the big decisions with a lot of money. And I would encourage everyone involved, the committee, council, administration, that when this moves forward to do a more robust engagement process, that the decision isn't a binary one. Do you want parallel parking or do you want angle parking? Because it could very quickly get there in public discourse. And just really endeavor to find a way to tell the story of the why of the project and the benefits and the trade-offs, because you're right, it doesn't suit everyone to a T, but there are broader objectives kind of looking down the road that need to be explained and considered for everyone to give you informed opinions that will enable you to make the ultimate decision. So just past experience, I've seen these things go a little sideways when it becomes too too black and white. And last thing, the vehicle turning movements it's a good point there. That all gets figured out in detailed design when we start to apply turning templates for different design vehicles. So good point and will be addressed.
Well, thank you. That was a great discussion, and thanks for your hard work with the committee there and the committee members. I know this has been a discussion, and I know some people are it's got you in up to your necks there, and you're wanting to be able to, put your real input in there. So I like it. Now it opens it up and away we go. Now we can start the dance. All right, can I get someone to make a motion? Councilor Zawitsky.
Yeah, I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the Center Street redesign project concept design as presented and directs administration to continue to the detailed design phase for presentation at a future meeting of council.
Get a seconder. Councilor McNeil. All in favor? All right, motion carried. Second motion, Councilor Kalafa.
I'll move that the Committee of the Whole recommends to Council the dissolution of the current downtown streetscape improvement task force and members appointed thereto be released from their appointments.
Seconder, Councilor Miller. All in favor? Thank you for your service, folks. Motion carried. Yeah.
So,
All right.
Your Worship?
Can we just give him a hand? Above and beyond.
Okay.
Your Worship, just for a little added clarity, when we do bring back a detailed design, we will be revisiting with our contracted provider here. How can we formally incorporate or expand the engagement that was done with the community? So that piece isn't currently included in the scope of the contract that we have with ISL. So this will be something that will require additional discussion and confirmation with council as far as what does that look like before we get to the adoption of an actual detailed design. Because what I'm hearing today is there's, as much as the task force met within the limitations that were defined for them, the discussion around this project, there's still this additional phase, generally speaking, with the rest of the community that we, council and the task force have recommended we pursue. So this is going to be an added piece to this, which we'll have to put together and bring to council for consideration. Thank you.
All right. And then, so now we're on to our energy management policy 5.2.2. Actually, you know what? Why don't we take 5 here? Mr. Brownstein? We're going to take 5. Okay, we're back and it is 7:37. So we're on to our presentation here about our energy management policy 5.2.2. So, Mr. Brownstein.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before the committee tonight is an energy management policy. This is the draft policy for the committee's review before going to council. This energy policy was part of our grant requirements with the Municipal Energy Management Program. Thank you, Municipal Energy Management Program. That's why I bought the dude that knows all things. He does it all. He does the acting for me too, and I'm not around. So the benefits of adopting this policy are both immediate and long term. So there are cost management aspects to this policy. So energy represents a significant and ongoing operational expense. Improved efficiency and reduced consumption will help mitigate rising utility costs and stabilize operating budgets. Improved asset performance. High efficiency systems reduce wear on mechanical equipment, helping extend asset life and reducing unplanned outages. This ensures facilities remain liable and capable of delivering required service levels. Part of this policy will be data-driven decision-making. So annual reporting requirements will provide council with measurable performance indicators, energy use, cost, and emissions, enabling informed budget and capital budget deliberations. This policy will also address enhance sustainability. This policy supports the town's environmental stewardship by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and overall energy consumption, contributing to a more sustainable community. Alignment with best practices. So this policy incorporates industry standards and approaches, including energy audits and performance tracking, ensuring the town remains aligned with leading municipal practices, as well as leveraging external opportunities. So establishing a formal energy management framework strengthens the town's ability to pursue grant funding, partnerships, and programs such as energy efficiency initiatives and clean energy initiatives. This policy currently has no financial implications in regards to your adoption, but this will have financial implications in our capital program and our operating budgets. Strategic policy alignment. So again, it does fall within policy 1, providing sustainable services. There is a recommendation before the committee tonight that the committee of the whole accepts the energy policy as presented and directs administration to bring the policy to a future council meeting for consideration and possible adoption. There are alternative directions below for the committee's review should you be interested. Again, whether or not you want to make amendments to this policy, that we bring it back to a future committee of the whole meeting for further discussion, or you just accept it as information and that's as far as it goes. Any questions, comments, concerns of the committee in regards to our energy policy?
Councillor McNeil.
Hello, I think it's an excellent policy. The one piece for me that stands out is I think it should be energy and water management policy. If it could include like the water management, because I think that in order to be sustainable, that would fit in as well. And I think that there are many ways like also that would reduce, say, the utility use. For example, with the spray park, that we don't have the spray park operating, say, 24/7, that it's got a timer, and then we can save and conserve water. So I just think the water component's really important.
Anybody else? Councillor Zarisky.
So this policy would incorporate the possibility of solar panels, like it kind of follows the guidelines that this could be part of this going forward. The policy would encompass that.
So through the chair to Councillor Risky, yes, you are correct. So that would be implementing renewable energy systems in municipal facilities where appropriate. So that's that guiding principle that we would look to include either solar or wind or other types of green energy in our new construction or current construction.
Anybody else? Councillor Miller.
Thank you through the chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor McNeil for her comment and say that I agree with that.
I got nothing to add. Do we have, can I get a Councillor Cloughlin?
I'm just curious. Yeah, I agree with the thought or the intention behind it. I'm just not sure if adding that to this particular policy would either meet the expectation of why we're doing it to fit the grant, or if it would be easier to implement through another department if we had a different, you know, if we could pass this and then look at the water one for a different way, I guess is my thoughts.
What was your intent? Was your intent just efficiencies? Councillor McNeil?
Yeah, I was primarily looking at water conservation and being efficient with the use of water, because there's also in parallel utility usage that goes along with the water usage. But yeah, if it fits better in a separate policy for water and water conservation, then I'm totally fine with that. Whatever makes the most sense. And I don't want it to be, you know, creating a lot of time or anything like that.
Through the chair to Councillor McNeil, with the policy guidelines being as broad as they are, we can incorporate water conservation into any one of these policy recommendations. So it's improving energy efficiency. So water wastage is energy. So we can use that particular avenue when we're looking at how we're designing things or our current usage of water in regards to a splash park or the fountain or whatever. So we can use that language is in this policy. If council wants to see a water conservation policy come back, that can be arranged. Probably won't be in 2026, be more like 2027, but we can bring a water conservation policy back.
I'll just add to that just briefly. One of the things that did come up in the strategic plan is a focus on needing to show a commitment on the environmental conservation, water conservation side. So that request is in line with that direction, which is wonderful. Perhaps in the interest of time, we can start with this. I agree that we can integrate and create more of an environmental management policy that's more all encompassing, including other things like water, urban forestry. We could get into a few different categories. The other thing that I want to put a caution out there for, specifically on water or with energy, when we went through this, the policy statements were probably 3 times as long as what you're seeing here, because there is a number of restrictions that do directly impact financial capacity. And as much as we do want to show a commitment to energy efficiency and environmental conservation, we also have to think about those costs associated. For example, with the BCF, when it was built, it was LEED certified, which is wonderful on the environmental side and the conservation energy management side. But it also means that we are now at a point where things are starting to deteriorate and needs to be replaced, and everything now needs to come from Europe in order for us to maintain that LEED certification, which is not possible. Costs are a lot higher. So I do want to put out a word of caution to say that there is a balance that we have to take into consideration depending on what we're committing to within the policy wording. So we do have a commitment in here, for example, to incorporate the consideration of energy efficiency and energy management in our procurement processes and in our request for proposals or our tenders, to say we will designate those opportunities to have those savings within the criteria process, but it's not going to be the be all and end all at the same time. I think this warrants a larger discussion on how council feels environmental management and sustainability. What does that look like? It's not just about energy. It's not just about water. It's about a bigger definition of what is the vision and what is the want of council's commitment at that level. That being said, you did make a comment about, I think it was the fountain, or maybe it was the water park side, but I can clarify too, because I just was informed about this the other day. Our water fountain, because it is something that does require AHS testing on a regular basis, it cannot be shut off. The moment we turn it on, it has to run for the remainder of the summer, unfortunately. So as long as we have that where people are going into it, and it's very much like a pool, it needs constant, that circulation of the pump provides that circulation, and Mr. Brownstein or Mr. Zier could probably provide a more technical definition of why that is, but it is a requirement for the pump to be continually running. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Anything else to put in on that? No? Okay. Can we get a motion then? Deputy Mayor Hardy?
I move that the Committee of the Whole accepts the Energy Management Policy number P0626C as presented and directs administration to bring the policy to a future meeting of council for consideration.
Thank you for that. Any seconder? Councillor Hanson, all in favor? Motion carried. Okay, thank you for your presentation. Okay, now we are on to 5.3, closed session. Can I get someone to make a motion that we move into our closed session? Councillor Zarisky?
I move that the Committee of the Whole closes the meeting to the public at 7:49 p.m. to discuss personnel as per ATIA 20, disclosure harmful to personal privacy, and ATIA 29, advice from officials.
Okay, I thank you for that. Councillor Miller, second it. All in favor? All right, motion carried. All right. And that's the end of our show for today, folks. Thanks for coming out. There's a lot of good discussion over there. There's a lot of things to think about and consider. There's some good money to be spent, and we'll need some guidance on that. So, if you see us, talk to us. Don't scream at us. Talk nice. All right.